Few in motocross have walked the path that Nate Ramsey has over his 3-decade career. From humble beginnings in Tennessee, Nate Ramsey got his start late, and a professional Supercross career looked unlikely at best. Nate Dogg did find his way onto a factory team and was able to deliver a championship title for Mitch Payton, setting in motion a career that embraced the inevitable change in the industry. He took a chance on early 4-stroke technology, and his career culminated in his only 250 main event win that is regarded today as one of the best races of all time. His ability to be the rider he needed to be for the team or the bike he was on translated perfectly into his role as a team manager post-racing. Now, in 2025, Nate Ramsey has taken the skill of getting the most out of himself to getting the most out of his riders, helping 250 standout RJ Hampshire win his first championship.
It all came together, and for me, it was way better than winning a championship for myself.
And fan favorite Malcom Stewart win his first ever 450 main event.
Malcom got in the lead. I'm like, this is just his night. This is it. Like, I got nothing to be worried about.
You would have to look hard to find a person in the Sueprcross paddock that doesn't have a mountain of respect for this legend of two wheels. Gypsy Gang, welcome Nate Ramsey to the podcast. Before we get into this episode of the podcast, we need to bring you a quick word from our sponsor, motorsport.com. I got a YZ450F that I got some upgrades to do. You know exactly where I'm going. I'm going to need some help with customer service, so I'm going to chat with a gearhead. This box showed up. It has a 2007 KTM Master Cylinder, a Yamaha caliper, also 2007, and a Turner braided brake lines. I feel like this is a very good upgrade for $600. Need the old hanger, so we're gonna put a bit of grease on that and get it back on, bolt her up. Caliper has been done. Now this can just get bolted on. Now, shout out to Kiefer, who I think stole this off Doug Dubark. That was easy. Nah, that was easy. This is a pretty epic upgrade. You can get OEM parts to build this little Frankenstein brake kit, or basically anything else for any brand by going to motorsport.com. All right. Yo. Check.
Yep.
Yours is good?
Yep. Hello.
Got him. Nate Ramsey.
Yeah,
We're finally doing it.
let's do it.
My American dad, that's what I tell people. You're my...
Seems weird now because you are all grown up. I'm so proud. But yeah.
I was thinking about it today. I'm like, I was just such a fuck up back then. Like, you had to deal with probably like the worst version of me, I reckon.
I don't know. I mean, I've definitely seen worse. I don't know about for you personally, but yeah, you know, I mean, there was a lot of learning for you to do and growing up. That's part of it, and I've been around for a while, so I don't know. I didn't have any ill will or bad feelings for you. You're my little nephew or son or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, just running around missing flights. And
yeah.
Do you have one memory of like the funniest? Because there's a couple funny stories.
You might have to spark it off. As we know, my memory's not the best.
Do you remember there was one time, I think it was Atlanta, and I went out to party that night after the race, and then I came back super late, and you tried to wake me up in the morning, but I wouldn't wake up. Mm-hmm. And then I think maybe Ty Simmons had to like wake me up, and then I go downstairs like 2 hours past the flight's already left. And then I go downstairs, no ride to the airport. Dean Wilson and his parents take me to the airport, and I'm just cruising. I'm like, I've missed my flight. I'm late. I'm hungover. And then, so I stop, I get a coffee, I get some breakfast.
No stress, no worries, right?
You guys were all at the gate still. The flight was delayed. None of you had food. None of you had coffee. And I rock out, my hair's all
that
wet.
That sounds about right.
Oh,
the person who didn't plan at all
yeah.
pulls it off.
Yeah.
Gets more sleep. Well, maybe not more, but you got extra sleep for yourself. But I vaguely remember something like that, but man, it's such a that time is such a blur. I know you said that earlier, but for me too, like I was busy learning, like what it's like to be a team manager and be on the other side of the fence. I thought I knew as a rider what a team manager did, but I only knew the interaction between the rider and
the rider and the team manager.
I had no idea what all came with it, which was a lot. And yeah, like I mentioned, my first year doing it, I was a lot less stressed. And then as I learned more and got older and wiser, I was like, oh, there's a lot to worry about. So it kind of, built through the 3 years with the JDR team. And it was a great experience, and I learned a lot, and kind of set me up to go into the amateur management position. And then now here I am, pro manager.
Being crazy, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I just remember we had the office on Jefferson.
Yep.
And I would go, I was like the full-time filmer.
Yep.
In 2011. Was it 2011 the first year or 2012?
We started getting set up in 2010. And so 2011 would have been the first year.
Yeah. And we used to just go to work every day. And I didn't even really have a job. And I would just go there, and I had an office. It was next to your office. Everyone's Jay's telling everyone, yeah, we're going to make videos and we're going to do this. And we were all very ahead of our time, really.
Yeah.
I feel like that whole team was probably 4 years too early in a way.
Yeah, possibly. I think you guys being kind of younger and, the youthful side of it was something that I didn't know about. So obviously I just listened and went along with most of it. And, produced some cool stuff that's still talked about to this day. I mean, I have people that say stuff to me this video or that video, or just the way you guys did things. And then ultimately, I think you're right. We were a little bit early, but I think if we would have been able to hang on for maybe another 6 months, we would have been absolutely a legitimate team that was there to stay.
Yeah. Pretty wild when you think back. Obviously had Malcom, had Joey, the eye for talent was there. The infrastructure was there. And it's funny, JDR probably doesn't get the credit that it deserves in the industry now, because there was a lot of behind closed doors kind of stuff that never really got made public. And even after the team went away, no one ever really kind of knew the cool stuff that you guys were working on. And we were way ahead of everybody when it comes to we had a YouTube channel. We had hundreds of thousands of people on Facebook, and
we put Facebook as a logo on our bikes.
That's right.
I mean, that was crazy at the time. And obviously you could have, in these days, you could have built some serious money out of it, get some cash flow into the team from, a Facebook or a Instagram or TikTok or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're too early, too soon.
But it was just maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
Because it kind of went to the Bobby Hewitt team, right? Everything kind of that was going to JDR ended up sort of funneling into that Rockstar. It was Rockstar KTM then, right?
Yep.
When they went from Suzuki. So transition, it's almost like if JDR held on a little bit, they would have got that, which you just don't know that. And I mean, look at what Malcolm's doing now. You still got Joey. Were you guys, who else were you talking to early days to sign to JDR?
Well, obviously you mentioned Ty Simmons. We had some Australian guys. PJ Larson came over for the first year. He was a champion in Australia.
Working with PJ.
Yeah. He was awesome.
No, I still not. Whenever I see 927 on my phone, it still just hits me, dude, every single time.
Yeah, he had his challenges, but I think in the end, he was so talented and so capable, which is what made it hard when it didn't come through, But other than that, it was everything from Jason Anderson to, I'm drawing a blank on his name. 981 hangs around with Hanson some.
Politelli?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Politelli we were talking to him. You know, we had just hired a guy to be the amateur manager. I don't know if you remember that, but we had just hired James Coy to be the amateur manager and a mechanic, which is a guy named Brad that ended up working in off-road across the hall from me at Husqvarna. And, he was Rockstar Energy Husqvarna off-road racing. So, so he was part of it. And then, I mean, not long after that is when we had to shut the thing down. And, it was tough because you just got them going. And we were on the, I think maybe Geico was for sure going after amateurs hard. They kind of started that aggressiveness towards it. And we knew that we had to kind of work a feeder, with a team that is, has factory help, but not a factory team. It makes it harder, to get a draw, to get good guys there. So that would have helped us to groom guys and bring them up through there. So we were on the right track for sure. Just fell apart.
Just a little too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like if you think about, some of the mechanics that we had, like Shanty went on to work with AC. Now he's in NASCAR. Yeah. Vince, the crazy bastard, is still doing his thing, and like all the Akira stuff. Like, there was some really cool things with the bikes too. Yeah. Like I don't think people understood how good the bikes were. Yeah. Either it was like maybe could have gone the way of almost having like the star advantage in a way, like to where our bikes were so good at a time where KTM was so good. Like maybe even a bit of that friction between like the factory and what JDR was doing. Yeah. Even caused some of it,
Yeah. And looking back, even talking to Vince, I still talk to him and,
he's the best.
We know, we know that we could have done some things different to keep things smoother between the factory and us. And I think that, there was a lot of reasons and for us doing it the way we did it. And we were ahead of the game. Yeah, it still needed some work, but ultimately with the outsourced people that we connected up with through Vince, really Vince had all the connections and he's still working those connections today. I think that, we were just ahead with electronics, wiring. I mean, the main thing was when fuel injection came into a part of it. And we were on the cutting edge of really, really good setup. Bikes were already good and they were just going to get better. We had one bike that was built for the motocross season, I believe. We didn't put it into play during Supercross the year that the team went away, so we never got to motocross, but this bike was fast. Crazy fast for the time. So would have been interesting to see where we went. I definitely think if we would have made it over that hump, I think it'd still be around today.
Yeah, I think so too. And like just with the marketing side, and we were just like crazy. Like, even the web series, like we did the whole Coming to America thing, like just wasn't awesome. A thing. Like when you look back at it now, just no one was doing any of that. Yeah. And even now, like we didn't have much access then. I remember the first year I didn't even have a media pass. I was just filming the race.
I don't even remember thinking about that. That's what I'm saying. Things you learn, like, oh, Jase needs a media pass. Oh, really?
Dude, I used to just walk with the camera on my shoulder with like a proper vest and like I would just fake it till you make it. And I just walked down the tunnel, dude.
Which is crazy. There's no way you pull that off these days.
No, but nowadays though, like with the access. So back then, Feld just didn't give people access like that. It just wasn't a thing like it is now. But now I think if it obviously like, dude, what Jacob does for you guys, that Grit and Grind series,
it's really good.
Bro, it's so good.
It's really, really good. Like, and on top of like how good it is when he finishes it up, those guys are like part of the family. You know what I mean? Like they're just around. It was kind of like you when you were there. Like, they don't have an office sitting next to mine, but it's so easy and like we put the microphones on at the beginning of the day, and I forget it's on there, and I trust them. There's certain things that don't need to be aired or on the
Yeah.
and I trust them, and they're so easy to work with. They never make it hard on us, and so everyone respects them, everyone likes them, and it's easy all the way around. And then they put out a good product, which is even better.
Yeah. And like nowadays, I think Feld understands like the need for that sort of stuff. But I think just JDR was so ahead of it. Like, dude, to get 1 million views on a video on YouTube now is actually super hard in moto.
Yeah.
And like when we did Dream Ride,
Yeah.
that was literally Jay's whole thing, was just like, we just need 1 million view video. And it was like, wasn't open checkbook, but it was a fairly open.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
It was fairly open.
Yeah.
Like we got to do some crazy shit.
Yeah.
But we were in the era when you could get 1 million view videos and you could reach like a crazy audience, like if that kept going and compounded, like you see what the Deegans have built. Yeah. And it was like years before.
Yeah.
I
literally watched the Deegan thing unfold. Like the kid grew up with cameras around.
So they knew that,
all
like
time.
how powerful that strategy was,
Like I said, Brian's very smart. He built the brand. He knew what he was doing. And, at one point I remember thinking, I don't know if Haiden, with all this distraction, can he be a real guy when it counts the most when he's pro? And it wasn't long after that I realized, because he's been subjected to camera in his face every step of the way, that's what's normal for him. So it wasn't a distraction. It was just part of his life. Mm-hmm. So the fact that they did it so early and so evenly across his, ramp up through amateur racing, that was, very, very smart, and it played into, who he is now, where, there's a lot of people who think that riders who have everything handed to them aren't tough enough. Well, obviously Haiden is the exception to that, and that kind of curves that whole. So there's exceptions, right? He had everything he needed his whole life, and still the desire to win is like, right now he's probably got that one of the highest desires to win, you know? So it didn't matter that he had everything given to him and had the easy life. He was willing to work hard and get it done.
So you could see that in him even back then?
Yeah, like I said, I had those moments where I was like, is he going to be too distracted? But then in the end of the day, I was like, I think he's just so used to it, it doesn't matter. And then, like, realistically, you look back, he was on Super Mini, killed it his Super Mini year for us, and he's getting all these offers to ride a 250F, big offers, and we're in there, we're fighting. Till the final day, I almost had him to stay, and nobody even seen him race a 250F yet. Or he jumped on his dad's bike, rode a 450, ridden plenty of 250s, but like it's always different when you got to race it.
When you're racing.
So there's still a question mark, but he's since then answered all those questions.
Yeah, I kind of had the same thinking in a way, because you get desensitized over time. Like I even remember how much more sensitive I was at the start of the podcast to any criticism and negativity, and you'd like want to defend yourself, and like you had that, like that is distracting. Yep. And there's a period of time where you're very distracted by that, but then over time it just literally,
like, you probably don't even look anymore, right? Yeah.
But I look, but I can laugh. Like, it would be very, very hard for someone to like actually affect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like, you just get so used to processing the whole thing, like what it is. And that's literally where Hayden's at, where it's all noise. It's all just this weird thing that you've had to deal with. And you can see it affect other riders. Yeah. Like I would definitely think, if you play the other superstars in the sport, like the Chasers, the Jets, like those guys, I feel like do get affected by whether it's the media, whether it's the fans, like, and it's natural to be affected by it. I think it takes you to your end of your career to be like, like you get used to it. But he kind of started with that reaction?
Well, you got to overcome it, right? Like you have to figure out a way to overcome it, and not everyone can get past that as easy. I think part of the recipe for being a champion is you're a little bit selfish. You're a little bit self-absorbed, and that's just part of what it takes to make up the champion. And some guys can let it roll off, naturally, and then some guys it really gets in there, and then it starts to imprint on your brain, like this guy does this every time he's in this position, so just expect it, and then you start subconsciously thinking that, and then you end up doing exactly what your greatest fear. Yes,
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you struggle with being selfish? Because you're one of the nicest, most unselfish people I know.
Probably why I didn't win enough.
I was just thinking. Yeah, I'm like, were you not selfish enough to be?
I mean, I for sure had my moments, and the people probably closest to me felt it more than anyone else. But I really never. I wasn't brought up that way. Never was super self-absorbed. I don't care about the spotlight. That's why I don't do these things as much, But ultimately, I think I kind of skated on the, just being normal.
Just you were like kind of on the edge.
Yeah. Had a little bit of that me, but at the end of the day, racing wasn't the biggest thing in my life. It was God first and then family, So it was easy for me to put it in perspective. And there was a moment early on in my career where I had it too heavy on me and had to kind of get past that. So I'd take a little pressure.
In what way?
Just wanting to win, wanting to be successful, and thinking that was the only thing in life that mattered. And ultimately, my faith is what kind of got me over that hump. And, once that happened, I was able to do more at the races of what I was capable of. Before that, I think I was kind of good in practice sometimes and, okay at the race, and usually something would cause me to crash, or something would happen where I wouldn't get to the point where I felt like I could.
Yeah.
And once I kind of let go of that and put everything in perspective, then started doing better and started winning, got a championship.
What's the process of like letting that go? Like, how did you get to that point?
Well, it's an interesting story. A buddy of mine that I grew up with named RJ Penn, I raced with him. He traveled with me as a privateer, me and my mechanic Bundy, and with the family at some points. And it was weird because I probably hadn't talked to him for a couple years, and he called me. I think this was going into 99 years, so 1999, so end of 98. And he called me out of the blue and just talking. Every once in a while he would do that. But he called me and he was just like, man, his faith had grew, and he'd become, more connected to God. And he was just like, man, it's just like, I only wish I could have got to this point when I was racing, because now he's like, I could have been so much better, because he was super talented, way more talented than I was, but he couldn't put it all together, especially on the big platform, at the bigger events. And as he's telling me how it affected him and it took the pressure off, it just dawned on me. I was just like, I'm in the same boat, man. Like, I got to figure this out too. So I decided at that point, like, hey, I'll get everything in order and take the pressure off a little bit. And at that point, I was about to get married, didn't have kids or anything yet, but we knew we wanted kids. And, I was like, I got to prioritize what's really important to me. Obviously, racing is a major thing for me, but it's not who I am. It's not my life. Ultimately, I was just a guy from Tennessee who linked up with a girl from California and was blessed to be able to do what I love to do, which was ride motorcycles and train. I liked all of it, training and getting ready and, the competition of it and just everything.
That's so crazy that it was just a conscious decision and a switch that flicked. So it's like, because I feel like there's whether it's like faith or whether it's looking at your own ego in general, like that's kind of a thing that everyone needs to get to in their life. And I feel like I got that in 2018 when I tried to come back and I couldn't come back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like, that was the ultimate. I feel like the universe humbled me.
Yeah.
In like the biggest way.
Yeah.
And there was no way of like hiding from it or escaping it or like not telling people. Like it was just like right there on display. Like you fucked up, bro.
Yeah.
And now you have to go over there and deal with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's almost like I don't know. It was almost like a spiritual thing in a sense of like, there's a lot of you that has to die to go forward, like from this. You
gotta be able to leave the past, and I mean that's part of you growing up. It happens different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
You know, my story is my story, and that's how it happened for me. But yours is obviously it's a cool story as well, and it's a little bit of the same.
Yeah, that's what I'm like thinking.
Yeah,
I'm like,
there's
it's
some
kind of
connections there.
similar there, but it's like for you, like you just actually consciously made the decision. It's not like you were in a crazy bad place or like something didn't have to happen.
Rock bottom or something like that.
Like you just kind of identified this hole you had in your life. Well, not a hole, but like a block that you had that could be helped by this thing. That's like a really cool way to kind of go about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty awesome. And then at that point, I won some races that year, won the championship. And, you know, you had to constantly put yourself back in perspective because it was easy to let that overcome the rest of my life. But, again, great parents, great wife, and then a great family on her side that was supportive no matter how I did. And I knew, like, whether I won or lost, when I came home, I was loved all the same. And I was like, that's what it's all about. You know, you can come home, disconnect from it. Yes, that's what you want because you work so hard. Everybody around you works so hard for your success. Ultimately, it's a big deal. But at the end of the day, you're just a person who's loved, husband, father, son, brother, all that.
So what was the days / weeks after you had that phone call like? Like, what's the process that you go through? Yeah,
I mean, it's a little bit hard for me to remember back to that, but I just remember thinking, you know what, it's not all about this, so let's take a little bit of the, magnifying glass off of this part of my life, refocus on some of the other stuff a little stronger, and then continue to do the work that I was already doing. And I was still learning a lot. I mean, you never stop, right? But I was like, what's too much? Am I working too hard? There's plenty of times through my career when I'm like, okay, I'm going overboard. I need to pull back, right? So there was a lot of little things, but I think that it was more likely that it was at the actual races and the events that I was able to
just reframe,
relax a little enough to where I could at least ride to the point of what I was capable of, and then stop crashing as much. There was a time when I wanted it too much. You can do that. I mean, RJ's a great example of that. RJ and I relate really good because stories are somewhat similar, and the desire to win and doing it a little bit later in life, and not knowing growing up that I'm going to be a pro motorcycle racer. Neither one of us knew or thought that was probably even possible to happen. I think it was when I won my first race, which was Phoenix, back when we raced in the city there. I won my first race, and when I went over the finish line, I was like, I guess I am supposed to be doing this. That was it. That's when it hit me. Like, okay, you are in the right place, So it's just weird how it unfolds, and everybody has I'm sure a great story of that. And I think that for me, I wasn't the most talented guy. I've seen guys that were way more talented than me not make it. I've seen guys who are less talented still make it. So there's so much more to it than just talent and just the willingness to do the work. Because I know a lot of guys who are willing to do the work, and they're very, fit and in shape, but they can't do it for the motos, or when the time is right, that something just doesn't click and it doesn't come through in that right time. And I also believe that everyone sort of has a temperature gauge that they can handle heat wise, and it's just naturally some guys can handle it higher. And I was one of those guys who could, it wasn't fun, but I could handle the heat and I could dig deep into the hurt locker and usually, push through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just such a cool story to hear, like, that perspective, and to, like, there's guys, like, I guess we were talking about it before, but there's, like, guys on the start line right now that just, like, top of the sport, millions of dollars, haven't had that moment. Yeah. Haven't had that honest, for you, it's like honest to God moment. And there is like, I guess, a letting go.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's like and it's a weird, because your ego is like this thing that you're trying to hold on to.
Yeah.
It's like a very protective thing, the I, me. Yeah. Like, and when you're a racer and an athlete, like, you do have to be very like that. But then there's also, and not that I'm religious in a sense, but, like, I guess I understand, like, in that context of, like, letting go to God as such, and, like, letting go to the plan that someone else has for you, and it's not about your plan and what you want it to be. It's fine to trust in this other thing and trust in something that's bigger for yourself, but, like, that's where you have to be extremely humble to genuinely let go in that sense.
Yeah, that humility is what takes you to that next level of what you're capable of. At least for me it was, and I believe that's part of the recipe. And just to truly be happy. I mean, there's plenty of champions in all kinds of sports that are just miserable, and it's hard to watch, It's hard to
see it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can clearly see it, So, and then, also what you create by being that way, where it never really dawns on you, or you never have that honest moment, is what happens after racing, or what happens after, if you're a baseball player, football player, UFC fighter for you. You don't know who you are, So if you don't figure it out along the way and realize, like, hey, this is, I always knew the shelf life for a professional motocross, supercross rider is very short. And I milked it. I milked the crap out of it. I did it 16 years. And again, like I said, there was a lot of people better than me that didn't get that out of it. I think that's what helped me go longer and stick around a little bit longer, and then ultimately be able to stick around as a different part of the sport, instead of being a racer, part of the crew, manager, whatever you want to call it. I think that helped me because it was easy for me, so it's probably not completely fair to say, but it was easy to put other people ahead of me,
Yeah.
But some people struggle with that to this day, and people who've retired and can't let go of, like, the fame or the idea that they're only a racer. That's tough, man, and that creates a tough life of, most of the time pretty unhappy people.
There's such a balance there, though, right? Like, once you let go of, like, that ego, or once you kind of you start walking that road, it's also very hard to be the selfish, egotistical, competitive. Like, there's a big part of that goes away too. Yeah. So it's like,
it's a balance, because if you lose everything, then you ultimately, maybe you don't care as much, Yeah. And you might start cutting corners. So you got to be conscious of all that, because it can fade. That side of the desire can fade away, and then maybe you're done, Yeah. But most of the time, I think people can find a balance,
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to be, like, as selfish as possible about your training and about the food. And, like, there's some stuff where you have to be the most selfish person. And then I would almost assume that to be a guy that's working with mechanics, engineers, team managers, then you almost have to be, like, the most unselfish, the most humble. You have to, like, almost reverse the roles in a way. And I feel like the person that can do that and play both of those sides, that's probably, like, the most dangerous person.
Yeah. I mean, you still, in the midst of all that, if you're a leader, of a team or whatever business, whatever it is, you have to be humble enough, but you also still have to have that winning edge, that competitive side that you want to be a winner. And it truly goes from me or I to us and we, and you really got to flip that side of it, because I none of the success that I've had, even as a racer, it wasn't just me. There's so many people that had their hand in it, or some way helped me get over a hump or get past certain things that I couldn't do on my own. So it's the same thing. I'm constantly listening to other managers or to other leaders of the sport, or leaders in general. I mean, I'm not above, I had a guy come in and coach me on leadership, so it's the same concept. You want to be the best you can be, but now I'm a manager, so I'm on the other side of the fence. So the better I am, the more chance I have to get the best out of my team, the crew, and the racers ultimately, and get the finishes that we're all looking for, to where we, sell bikes, sell parts, do what we do to keep the circle going,
keep
right?
it turning, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think leadership is a quality that people are born with, or is it something you have to learn?
I think it can go either way. I think most people, or some people, are born and they just have this natural way of leading, and people are drawn to them. There's certain coaches that I can remember that I had along the way, whether it's a motorcycle coach or, say, football, baseball, because I did do some mainstream stuff first. And you want to give them more than you're even capable of. So a leader or a coach who's in that position that just brings that out of you, that feels a little more natural, And then there's guys that are hard on you, and they slam the hammer. Everybody's different on the styles that works for them. So certain riders with me, I'm not I don't slam the hammer much. If I get mad, it's going to be probably over a big deal. But most of the time, I'm trying to figure out, how do we fix this? How do we make this better? What's holding you back, or holding the crew back, or whatever? Trying to, fix it together, really. Like I talked about, Tony as the crew chief, and Sean as the other team manager of Gas, as well as he does the majority of coordinating for the team. And I mean, I don't make a decision unless I talk to them. It's kind of like at home with your wife, right? You want to include them. As soon as you stop including them, then it drives a wedge in the relationship, to where it's not going to work as good anymore. And eventually you'll go separate ways and it'll be over. So it's the same concept. Same thing with if you had a business or office job. Most of the true leaders are bosses, right? They're not just a boss, right?
Yeah.
They're a boss. They're not above any task. I mean, back to JDR days, like that's what I kind of knew going in, is like there's no job here with this team that's too small for me as a team manager, and there's no job that, well, it could feel too big, but I got to handle it,
Yeah.
So it's that same concept all the way across.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I definitely always remember, is like your style of leading, and I feel like you were a person that everyone wanted to follow, like even Jay, who owned the team.
Yeah.
So like technically your boss, but even he would look up to you, and it definitely like stuck with me, because I had a ton of people that were bosses, not leaders.
Yeah.
And it's like when you actually work with a person that is a leader and leads by example, and like it was definitely like a cool experience for me to kind of see that,
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome to hear, because that's what you want, like you never want to be this boss that leads everyone out of fear and goes like, oh, I can't do that. That's not, if I'm seen doing that, cleaning the toilets, then how am I the leader, or how am I the boss? Like you got to get rid of that thinking, because
that's almost the opposite in reality, though.
Right.
If people see you cleaning 100%. The toilet, then it's just like,
hey, dude,
I need to work for this,
Yeah. And it maybe for me, I can only speak for myself. Maybe it was easier for me than it is for some, but I've been around bosses and guys who are in leadership roles, and they are above a lot of things in certain talks and certain situations with employees, or a low-level employee they don't want to deal with. They're above all that, and then eventually I watch, and I go, okay, it's just a matter of time before they phase out of this deal. And it happens time and time again. I'll call them out. Even my wife, she works at a hospital, and she'll come home and tell me about situations and different people that she's working with or working for, and I'm like, just give it time. Just give it time, because it'll expose itself, and it'll take care of itself. You don't have to do it. You don't have to handle it yourself. Yes, handle the situations and do what you think is right, but in the end, they will get exposed. And so far, it's usually worked out that way. Yeah,
dude, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I think leadership is something that I kind of had to start thinking about because of this.
Yeah.
Like when you have employees, and then you've got people that like work with you,
Mm-hmm.
and like here we have a team.
Yep.
And it took probably, I reckon, 3 years of me doing that to maybe figure it out in a way,
Mm-hmm.
to where it was like we were all getting the best out of each other. And it actually started to work as a unit, you know?
You realized like they started working for you, or they stopped working for you and started working with you.
Yeah.
Right. So I try my best to never refer to someone, oh, he works for me.
Yeah.
I work with the team, like they don't work for me. There's certain things that I have to be the ultimate decision on, but at the same time, I want to see where their heads are at. 90% of the time I'm weighing in to see where everybody's head's at,
Yeah.
So for sure, it's different.
Yeah, and it took me a while to figure it out. And I think it also takes a while to learn that one size doesn't fit all. Like
Yep.
everybody's requires different styles and attention and different things. And it's like,
Yep.
if you have this approach of like, no, this is how I communicate, this is how I talk, get used to it. Well, if
Yeah.
you have that approach, then there's only you're relying on luck for people to come in, and that's just their style that they
Well, you're going to
respond
filter through a bunch of employees or people you work with, right? Because some people can handle that, and some people can't. I mean, it's just the way it is. And if your approach is that, then you're just going to have a big turnover rate, because you can't keep anybody engaged or on board, or you're rowing in circles instead of all going the same direction.
Yeah, and then it's definitely over the years become way more fun. And it's the same crew, so we've only had the same people
Mm-hmm.
that have worked, and it's way more fun now.
Yeah.
But I think that there's just like a natural process of like getting things up to standard. Then once things are at like a standard, and then you can evolve. I think that's like another key thing is like having people be able to evolve in their position,
Yeah.
and like constantly get better. I think
Yeah.
that's one thing that we try and do here. Is
that's a
all
sign
the
of
time,
great
just a
leadership.
little things better.
Yeah. That's a sign of great leadership, when you have people evolving, and you may not want to lose them because they've evolved so much that they've either outgrown their position and there's nowhere for them to go with you, and they got to go somewhere else, or they get an offer because other people notice. But honestly, that's good on you, because you've allowed that to happen. I mean, within our company at KTM Group, like, if there's a position that's open, and the employee feels like they're a good fit, it may hurt a department to lose that employee, because most of the time they're good, right?
Yeah.
But no one wants to stand in their way of growth,
Yeah.
And I think the culture of our company, and any company, should be that way, because you hold somebody back or you block them. One, if you try to keep it from them, they find out eventually, and then that blows up in your face.
Yeah.
Or if you let them know, then they're resentful right away, and then you lose part of that relationship. So it's about relationships. I mean, you're not gonna bow down to anyone, but you make them feel as part of the whole process. And it's the same way with relationships with sponsors and people who are supporting you from outside of the industry. Like, it's huge to make them feel part of it. As soon as you lose that, they're like, why am I doing this? You know,
Yeah.
it's a lot of money to be a part of this, and now I'm just questioning everything. It's easy for them to just go, I'm over it.
So, who were some of the most influential leaders in your life before you started management?
I mean, the first one that pops in my head is definitely Mitch Payton.
Yeah, right.
You know, I rode for them for 3 years. And I was a little bit older. I was always older than most people thought.
So, what
I
year
was.
did you turn pro?
I turned pro in 93.
Yeah. And how old were you?
19. Right? See what I'm saying? So, yeah. No, yeah. Yeah, 19.
That's
I
not
turned
like
pro, but you got to understand,
the-
I just decided to turn pro. I didn't have a deal or anything. I was a privateer.
You're just like, I'm a pro now.
I literally raced the Florida Winter Am Series, and it was pretty big back then.
So, who were you racing against back then?
I mean, Robbie Skaggs. I mean, like, most of the guys that you see now are younger than me, so I would once in a while race Ricky, you know, but he was like this high with a cut seat because he couldn't touch on an 85, or it was an 80 back then, right? So Ricky, Wyndham, Ezra, you know, Red Dog, guys like that, they were always way better than me, but they were kind of either, most of them were younger than me, but they would whoop me every time I got a chance to race with them. But I just kept positioning myself, being around those people. I mean, like, I just was a sponge. I'm like, I started this racing thing late, so I got to soak up everything I can. So those guys were awesome to me to, you know, allow me to be a part of it. We were friends, you know, so there was a friendship there. So it wasn't like I was just mooching off of them, you know. So I learned a lot from them. But kind of back to Mitch Payton. Actually, I'll kind of go back a little further. I rode for a dealership in Winston-Salem. I rode for a dealership in, it was called Mark IV, and it was Withville, Virginia. That's what it was. And a guy named Tam Topham was the owner of the dealership, and I went, Bundy was my mechanic. If anybody knows me, they know that connection. But we lived with him at his house and back and forth to the dealership every day, and he would drop me off 5 miles from the dealership and go, all right. You know, I thought I already had a strong work ethic, and I thought I knew what I needed to do, or, you know, somewhat. And he just kept teaching me lessons of hard work. You know, if he saw me with a Pop-Tart, smack it out of my hand. You can't have that. It's too much sugar. That's not the right thing to be eating. I mean, a breath mint. At one point, me and my mechanic, Bundy, are arguing because I ate a breath mint after dinner, you know, and I'm just like, so, yeah, you got to find that balance. But I learned a lot from Tam about commitment and work ethic and what it really, truly takes to, you know, hit the level that you're aiming for in the sport. And then,
so what, he'd like drop you off 5 miles from the dealership and you'd have to get there?
Yeah.
Just
I
run?
have to run. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then,
And how old were you then? Like, this is around the 19.
No, I was older because, like I said, I was probably, actually, I take that back. I was probably 20.
Yeah.
Maybe 21 at that time. I turned pro in 93 and kind of got my first factory ride in 97. But I didn't start racing. You know, I raced a couple times when I was 12, broke my leg, and then I didn't really get into it till I was like 15.
That's crazy.
Which would be really hard to pull off these days because everyone's so good.
You couldn't do it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just kind of lucked into it. You know, I say lucked, but I mean, obviously tried to, you know, make the best decisions and work as hard as I could. I knew I had to outwork the guys around me to make the difference. And nowadays, everybody's working pretty hard. So
yeah.
that'd be tough as well.
We were talking about this the other day. Like, there's an era, like, so Griff's era, right? So he's 20.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these kids that, like, there's one guy that he mentioned, like an Aussie kid, right? That's over here, living at a compound. Dad's got plenty of money. He's not that talented, but he's just in the system and just working every day, right? And he's good to a level where somebody with all the opportunity, all the bikes, lives at the facility, but he's like not that talented. Yeah. But there's so many of those kids now. So there's like this really thick deep pool of kids that are like pretty good because of all of that.
The majority are good, almost teetering on great, but you have to be X factor. I mean, if you want to be a champion, you can have a place in the sport and still be relevant, but to get to be a champion, you got to have everything you mentioned plus that X factor, right?
Plus like crazy talent.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and a work ethic to match it, you know? And, but if you kind of go back to what you were saying about this kid, even though most likely he's probably not going to make it as a professional racer, or if he does, it's not going to be what he really wanted out of it. He's learning like hard work, like the lessons that sports teach you, like it's crazy. I mean, yes, I relate mostly to motocross and supercross and the relation of that sport to my life, but I mean, across the board, I mean, my son was such a introvert as a kid, and so like shy and scared to like look at people and all this stuff, and like sports literally brought him out of that. So there's so much more to it than just the sport.
Yeah, he turned into a dog.
Yeah,
with baseball and basketball.
He's obviously very, very athletic, and he's just a good-hearted person. Yeah. You know, he's a young man now at 22, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
But ultimately, I feel like if he would have had to come out of his shell or, you know, correct some of those things just through normal life, let's say school and just regular life, it would either taken a lot longer or maybe it never would have happened.
Yeah.
But the fact that he did sports and was able to relate to that and relax a little bit and get confidence in himself, that brought him out like way, way quicker. So there's just so much more to it. So it's not a waste of time for this kid that you mentioned from Australia because he's learning so many valuable life lessons, you know? So I think that's very important to realize that, you know, you're not wasting your time because you are learning stuff and it'll apply.
Well, and I think even the level of pain that you go through, like there's also something in our world that normal people aren't exposed to in terms of just trauma and dealing with trauma. Like when we first met, I crashed and broke my hip and it was like the worst. I ripped all the skin off like the muscle on my arse cheek and it filled up with blood and I like lost feeling in my legs for a couple of weeks and like
oh my gosh,
it was just this whole thing of just a stupid little crash.
Yeah.
And to her it was just like this mind-blowing like stop everything. Yeah. Are you okay? This is crazy. And I'm like all good. This is just normal. Part of it. You know? Yeah. So I think that there's also this training and like conditioning. And I just wonder if people that have never been through that, like what their aversion to challenge and pain and struggle is in life. Because it's just like, if you want to do this, there's all of this that you are going to have to overcome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. Like if people who haven't been through that or haven't had that altering mindset to go like, you know, a broken arm, a broken leg, I mean, yours was a hip, which is a massive injury, just becomes another obstacle. And it wasn't like you ever considered like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. You know, like I hate this sport now. You know, I mean, if anybody has that thought, that's a true, you know, competitor in motocross, supercross, or amateur racing, it goes away pretty quick. You know, I mean, that's why like even older people, vet riders, I mean, it's hard to explain to people that don't understand and don't get it because it's like, I need this. Like, even though I just broke my leg and I missed, you know, a month of work and we all struggled because this is part of who I am. I need this. If I don't do this, I'm not me, you know? So it's interesting. It's pretty deep when you think about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I wasn't sort of saying that kid would maybe be like wasting his time, but it's more so like, the level that you can get to without a crazy amount of talent. Like if you get into the system, if you've got a really good bike, if you're living at a facility, if you've got someone paying the bills and like you can actually get to a very high level of racing. Like you might you're probably not going to be a champion. But think about in your time how few people had that opportunity.
Yeah.
And so, like, to say somebody just couldn't do it now because there's so many of those guys that are in the, like, thousands of those kids that are just got their life is dirt bikes. Like, to break through that level of noise now, you have to be so insanely good.
Yeah. I mean, that level is so deep.
Like, the lowest level is very high.
Yeah. And when you were talking about that, I'm like, I mean, that kid or any kid in that situation could easily go to a track back east or back home in Australia, and people would watch him and he would win, and they'd be like, there's no way anyone's better than him.
Yeah.
And then he comes here or goes to the bigger platform, and it's like no one even notices him. He just disappears. It's crazy, the levels, right? I mean, it's that way in all sports. You know, you could be the main guy on your basketball team in high school, and then, you know, you travel somewhere else, and you're just like, oh,
that's why
different.
The NFL has to be probably the craziest sport in the world. Yeah, I think so. Like, if you think about how many people play football in America, how many kids on Saturday or Friday night are playing that sport, and so, like, the base of the pyramid is so wide.
Oh,
and
huge.
Then it just keeps going. To be the top 1% of the 1%, because they're the people that like, think about how pointy that,
gnarly.
like, the tip of that pyramid is.
So gnarly. And you watch an NFL game or even college, and you're just like, look at these guys. They make a mistake or something, and you're just like, this guy's terrible. He's the worst quarterback ever. Dude, he's the 1%.
Yeah.
Like when he was in high school, or, you know, whatever he played as a kid, junior All-American, whatever it was, this kid was so much better than anyone else, you know. And then there's cases where they mature later, you know, for sure. But, like, imagine, like, I mean, 90% of those NFL guys that we want to talk crap about or make fun of or whatever, they're amazing. Amazing.
Well, it's the same in Supercross.
Yeah.
Like, the stuff you would see daily at the test track out of Malcom or RJ, and you just be like, dude, there's no way someone's better than you.
Yeah.
And then you get to a race and they get 8th.
Yeah.
And 8th sucks.
Yeah.
Sorry, bro.
Not good.
Terrible.
Yeah.
You're shit.
Yeah.
Look at that guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, to get 8th in a 450 Supercross main event in 2025 is maybe one of the craziest things of all time. But when it's against Jet or Eli, or you got Kenny that just gets a start and runs away, you're just like, they're not even close. Yeah. Not even on the same zip code.
Yeah. So it's all relevant, right? Like you said, football, you know, the pool of actual kids, people who are playing it and trying to get to this level, possibly, right? It's massive. But there's, you know, bunch of teams, bunch of spots on every team.
Yep. What, 52 on a roster?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, just to make the roster, right? But then you take our little sport in comparison, but it's a much smaller pool, but there's so many less people who make it. So it's pretty relevant when you look at it.
Yeah.
I agree. Football is one of my favorite sports besides racing, and it is brutal. Like, I mean, they have to figure that whole concept out that we talked about, getting through injuries. I mean, they just like, I mean, you watch you play fantasy football, and this guy like separates his shoulder in a play, and then it's like, okay, they're expecting him like, oh, take a couple plays off, he'll be back out there. And even if he doesn't, then it's like the next game, the next week, he's playing. It's nuts,
dude.
And I mean, yeah, football's its own beast. But in my mind, there's no other sport in the world that has as many factors that can go right or wrong as motocross and supercross.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about, in motocross, 40 guys on a gate, and they all got different motorcycles with hundreds of different parts on them that could fail or make it, right? They all got their own mindset, so they're making decisions, and some guys are good at split-second decisions, some guys aren't. Then the track changes every lap.
Every lap.
And then there's so many factors that go into it. It's just like you can't even list them all. So the fact that there's that many things that can either put you on a good race or a bad race, or a good experience or bad experience, is just, it blows my mind. And looking back on it, thinking I did it for 16 years, I'm just like, how did I make 16 years of this? And there's guys that have made it longer.
And even it's the best point. And then think about the laps at the track. Every single week, over and over, round and round. Yeah. Bro, the trust in a chain. Like,
you can't you can't start thinking about that stuff because it'll freak you out. I mean, you get off on a bike that just failed you. They fix it. And then, plenty of times throughout my career, they put it back together, but they don't know exactly what happened, right? It's like, okay, we think it might have been this, so we just replaced it. So you don't know for sure. And you got to go back out there and go again. No questions asked.
It is crazy, dude. And then even think about in Supercross, right? The thing that I say to people in Supercross is like, okay, motocross, I get it. You're over 100 acres. 40 dudes, 100 acres, wide track, plenty of room. Okay, now let's go to Angel Stadium. 75% of the floor space, 20 dudes with little rectangular blocks around the inside and the outside of the entire track.
Yeah.
10 of those dudes are really good. 10 of them not as good.
Yeah. Well, they're all good, right?
Well, they're all
got the X Factor guys that we talked about already. Yes.
There's a spectrum. And so 10 minutes in, not only are you going to have to deal with the 10 guys that are really good, but you're also going to have to deal with the 10 guys that aren't as good.
Right.
Bro, how do you do that?
The split-second decisions and in the air, coming in, where do I position myself on this guy I'm trying to pass, plus this lapper that's in the way. Like, it's incredible, the thing that you got to be able to overcome, right? And then just processing, right? I think that's another key to, being successful. These guys who naturally can process things, like, quickly, I mean, it's a huge benefit, If you take a split second to try and process, you're either too slow, or you crashed, or you got landed on, or you hit the lap rider or the guy in front of you. Like, it's all because you pause for a second.
So who are the best guys at processing?
I mean, I think it's pretty clear the guys who typically go the fastest, I think, are most of the time the best at processing. Like, I mean, obviously Jet stands out in my mind. He makes it, when he looks like he's not going fast and it's just unbelievable, like, he's processing. His brain is picking all this stuff up and processing it at such a earlier or faster rate to where he can slow himself down, still go the speed, but it's a lot less effort, And then how many times have you been at a track or been at a race, and if you were to just watch this one guy, he looks like he's going so fast, and then you look on where he's at on the board, and you're like, oh, 20th. Like, but if he was just the only one out there, you'd be like, then nobody can go faster. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But then you get a guy like Jet or someone who processes really, really good. Not to mention they're good on the motorcycle and can handle that processing. And then they look like they're going slow. But then you put them on a clock or you look on the board and you're like, oh, they're on the top. Man, that looked easy. I mean, I remember when last year at Hangtown, Casey Cochran, rookie, riding for us and just getting his feet wet, trying to learn, and he'd never been to Hangtown before, which it's really odd to say because most of these guys who turned pro have been to Hangtown. They've done a area or regional there. I mean, he's from the East Coast, so he had never ridden there. And so you're thinking about that, and you're like, all right, how do we get this guy on this track early so he at least knows it a little bit like everybody else? Well, a lot of times that doesn't work out. You just can't pull it off. And he goes there, and he qualified P1 as a rookie at his second pro national. And his lap, I remember saying to him, I'm like, you didn't even look like you were going fast. And he was like, it felt easy. Most of the time when you find that, that's what the answer is. Oh, it felt easy. I didn't feel sketchy. I didn't feel anything. Most of the time when someone goes, dude, I was so sketchy, I felt it was gnarly, like at that speed. They're usually not going that fast. That's all processing.
Because they're struggling to process it. It's coming at them quicker. And you think that's just purely like a genetic thing?
I think it's partly that. I think it's partly that, and I think that it has to do with what you've done your whole life, from sports to racing. And, I'm sure there's ways that you could tap into processing quicker. Because I think we've all noticed, like, you might be sick, a little bit sick, say you got a cold or something, and you want to go ride your motorcycle, and your brain's just not processing quick enough. So everything feels like it's happening at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you're not even going the speed that you normally go. So that's a little offset, right? Or you've had a concussion, and you're trying to come back and ride, and your brain won't process it. So that's all part of it. But I think that there's definitely a God-given gift of being able to process quicker. And you look at F1 drivers, like, you couldn't just throw anybody into a training simulator and then eventually put them in the car and then have any success, because their processing would get better, but these people have trained their whole lives to process quicker.
Yeah.
So
and that's what, when I asked Danny Rick about it, because like that's the example. Like it was after Baku, and I'm just like, bro, can you actually believe that you can do that? Like when you watch, like if you look at an onboard quali lap of that track, and it's just the craziest street circuit, so close to the walls, and he's just like, no, honestly, I can't. Like if you when you tell me that's me, that seems crazy to me. Yeah. And I'm like, how though? He's like, dude, you just do it your whole life, and your brain gets used to it. Yeah. And then he's like, when you go off season, you do the full off season, and you come back and you do the first test. And the first day, you're just like white knuckling, like, holy shit. And then it just goes away. Yeah. Your brain's just back up to speed.
It's amazing. It really, really is amazing. And you ask him about Motocross Supercross, he probably thinks it's insane.
Craziest thing ever, yeah.
Right? And I look at him and go, holy, that's crazy. Or a big wave surfer. Like, or, anyone who's good at their sport. Like, it's just, like, I try to explain. They're like, how are you okay with, like, hitting that jump and being, 50 feet in the air and not landing exactly where you want? And it's just repetitive. You just get used to it. And it's just like breathing, You got to teach people, pull in the clutch, hit the rear brake in the air. Like, you don't think about that anymore. You just do it when it's necessary.
That's one of the things that, like, this conversation is just fascinating to me, because I'm on this side of the fence of, like, I'm never going to be that good. And I'm never, like, so it's very clear to me as a person that's, like, right in the middle. Like, probably a little bit better than just an average Joe that's off the street. Yeah. Light years away from a pro, but I can understand what they're going through. Yeah. Yeah. And, like, that, so there has to be, well, this is the question I wonder, is, like, is it that I didn't spend enough time from a young age, like, developing that to get it? Or is it just there was a certain, like, whatever frequency that my brain's at is, like, just doesn't process that fast enough? And then you didn't start until you were 15, which is, like, essentially when I started racing, realistically. Like, rode a bit as a kid. Yeah, weren't allowed to have bikes, weren't allowed to race, played football, played all the other sports. When I got a job, bought my own bike, that's when I started, because I was actually paying for it. Yeah. So it's like, is it A, you didn't have enough talent, so no matter what you did, you would never be able to make it, or it's that you started too late, didn't spend enough time developing that processing power, and then you look at a guy like James Stewart, just spent his whole life every single day. Ricky Carmichael lived in a trailer, rode every single day. Like, is that what it takes? Like, what is the mix of that?
I mean, it's a great question, and I don't think there's a clear answer, because it's
just
so
that mix
many
between
different
nature and nurture, right?
Yeah, so many different things that play into it, right? From talent, opportunities, decisions, injuries. Parents being able to afford to go do it or put you in a position where you can excel. You know, I mean,
Parents
there's
even
probably,
having the want.
yeah, I mean, or yeah, like, do I really want to watch my kid go through all these injuries and things like that come with the territory? It's just so much that goes into it. You could not. There's no way to pinpoint one thing, but I don't like what you mentioned about never have a chance, right? Because I think everybody, given the right decisions along the way, circumstances, they can get there. You know, again, maybe they're not X Factor champion or whatever, but if everything kind of falls the right ways along the way, you know, purposely or sometimes, you know, subconsciously, I think anybody can do it. I feel like that's the only way I was able to do it.
Well, you're kind of the perfect example. Obviously, again, in a time that wasn't as thick, like the pool wasn't as deep, like the base of the pyramid's not as wide, essentially, right?
Yep.
But yeah, you came in 15 late and just made it happen. Like a 16-year pro career, won a championship, won a 450 or 250 Supercross race. So it's like that. It is obviously possible, at least in that time, to be that guy.
Yeah, no, it is. I just think that, you know, you have to have the attitude of I can do anything, you know, given the right circumstances and the work ethic and the willingness to sacrifice, you know, both good and bad ways, right? So I think it's all there, but unfortunately, everybody doesn't get every little piece, you know. It could be something you love more than anything in the world, and it just doesn't come together for you. And it's just, there's no way to like put your finger and go like, this guy didn't make it because of this, right?
Yeah.
It's so hard to say.
Yeah, and you think, like before you were saying about you're processing, but then you're not thinking about what you're processing. I think that right there, that is so deep and important.
Yeah.
And a lot, like if you look at maybe a guy like Jase, is either like that. I think that like right there, that's the window where there's struggle, because it's like, I know for me, like in jiu-jitsu, right, sometimes some of the craziest shit I've ever done.
Yeah.
Not thinking at all. Like that's the one place where when you talk about flow state and like not being in the moment, like that's why I'm so obsessed with it. I wish I could get to that with riding.
Yeah.
But when I'm riding, bro, I'm thinking. Like I'm stressing. I'm like thinking about this guy, thinking about that guy, thinking about the turn, thinking about this, thinking about that jump, kind of scared to do that. Should I do that? I got work tomorrow.
Yeah, look at this idiot up here. He's about to crash. I'm going to slow down here because I know what's coming.
This guy's watering the track. That up ramp's going to be slick, right? Jiu-jitsu, nothing. Completely blank. I am not me. Like, I'm not even a person when I'm doing that. And it is the best feeling. Yeah. I get up from, you do 6 minutes, slap hands. At the end of 6 minutes, grab the guy, shake their hand. Like, there's people I don't even know what their face looks like.
Yeah.
Because I'm not there when I'm doing it. And that's some of the things that you can do in that moment, you're just like, I can't believe I even did that. Like, you'd have to film me and I would have to watch it back to understand how did I get on the back right now? Or how did I get into this position? Yeah. That is what I think when you see a guy like Jet ride or like an Eli 2015, just not thinking at all. There is no championship. There's no contracts. There's no what my dad's going to think. There's no what my girlfriend's going to think. Just in the moment, living, swinging off a dirt bike and just making it look easy.
But that's all processing. Even what you're talking about with jiu-jitsu or whatever it is you're doing, like you've done it enough to where your subconscious takes over and the processing just happens. Like you didn't go, oh, this guy's going to put his arm in this position, so as soon as he does that, I'm going to grab an arm bar him, whatever, or he's going to turn, instinct. I'm going to get the choke. Like you can almost see it unfolding and happening, and you just react. Yeah. And that's, like you said, that flow state. And I mean, we've all heard and said, like, the thought process is too slow, especially for racing, but it also in your sport, right? So, like, as soon as you're thinking about it, somebody's either
It's already gone.
flying past you. I mean, that's what happened to me as I got older and knew it was like about time to hang the boots up. It was like I was thinking my way around a track or in a race, even worse. Like I could execute a Supercross track or whatever it was. I had a good pace and a good speed to be competitive, but in the end, I was overthinking everything, and I was trying to think my way through it because I had seen and had too many things happen to me, so I couldn't turn it off. It's like a little kid, walking around the house, like, don't touch the stove because it's hot, right? And they're not worried about it until they finally have touched it, and then from that point on, they don't touch the stove anymore unless it's an accident, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all part of growing up and maturing, becoming an adult.
So you think that like a guy like Jet or E, like those dudes that are they're purely those motos that they have where they're just like unbelievable, that's just the zone that they're in. It's just like all reaction.
100%. I mean, obviously they're good whether they go all the way into that all the time, and the consistency of a real guy, that's when you're stabilized as like, I'm a guy, like top 3, top 5 every weekend, even if I'm good on or off, right? But when they go into that, when the greats go into that, it's unbelievable.
Well, and it couldn't be every time, right?
No.
Like
it wouldn't even be that great. It wouldn't be that fun. The struggle is part of what makes it so sweet when it comes together, If it's too easy, I think that God just sort of designed us that way,
That needs to be
if everything just fell in your lap and everything was easy, it wouldn't be that fulfilling, And I think that's why, like a guy like RJ, yes, it took him a long time to get a championship, but man, that probably felt better than several of the guys who it kind of just come natural to, It's just like, it's true. Well, you work hard for something, it's that much more important to you.
Yeah. Man, RJ is like the definition of grit, determination,
sure
bro. Yeah.
Yes.
What's it been like working with that guy?
Like I said, we have a lot of similarities. I didn't know that coming in. I mean, when I got this deal, when I moved from amateur racing to pro, and for the Rockstar Husqvarna team, I knew Malcom because he worked with us, right? I had to make that phone call like that night, like, hey, this is Nate. RJ was probably the guy I knew the out of everyone. I'm calling Dean Wilson, Malcom, RJ, and
So you're calling him to tell him
like,
you
hey,
got the job.
Yeah, look, hey,
I'm your boss.
starting tomorrow,
I'm the guy.
or whatever. Starting now, I'm the team manager. Yeah, the dog father. Yeah. So, and I mean, obviously, RJ's a true professional, both on and off the bike, so he took it well. But he didn't know me. You got to establish that trust and everything. And I didn't know that we related so much. So over the years, we've figured that out. But I mean, the simple fact of how bad he wants it, how bad he's willing to suffer, how much risk he's willing to take day in, day out, like for a moment. And now what's really great with him is he starting to figure out when to push that edge and when to pull back.
It down.
Right? I mean, he easily could go into RJ mode. I call him Ricochet Rick when he gets like that, and like he just goes nuts, and it either works or it doesn't. But most of the time, that didn't work. So now he plays it a little smarter, to where he weighs it out. Just naturally through everything he's been through, he's naturally processing that and weighing it out. So not only are you processing everything that's going on in the moment, you also got to process what,
like the big
what's
picture.
worth it,
what's
not worth it, and then in the end, you grow and you mature, and he figured a lot out in the last couple of years, and just like anybody else, now he's had a couple injuries, so he's clawing himself back out of the hole. But I have nothing but respect for him. He's a great racer. Everything you want from a rider, from being, like I said, professional on and off the bike, work ethic, willingness to just, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable sometimes and risk it when, he's everything for that, and then he's a great dad, husband, like, he's just it's just a whole package is great. So it's really fun to work with, and I never have to question if I'm getting everything out of him.
100%. Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
It's a great place to be.
We were talking similar conversation, but like RJ, if you look at like RJ, Matt Bisceglia, Zach Bell, like that generation of guys, like you can kind of see the way RJ rides and how those guys rode. And you can look at that generation and be like, they were the first training facility. They were like the guinea pigs of the training facility. I feel like the technique side of things hadn't really come in yet. People weren't as obsessed with technique yet.
Yep.
But they were also riding, like he was maybe the first generation that would have done more laps than any generation ever before him, you know? And you can almost see like that style, a lot of those, his generation kind of like crashed out and didn't really like that. It's almost like that experiment failed, or it needed to be more redefined to
Not many people made it through that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the Sextons, like that. Sexton might have been like the first of the new generation that like kind of made it through. He had really good technique, you know, like the Faulkners, like super, super fast, struggled to make it through. And it's like RJ's kind of right on the edge of a guy that
could have easily.
He probably should have crashed out and never actually made it, just because the base wasn't as there as like the Sextons, the Lawrences, the Shimodas, the Kitchens, like that newer, almost like the 2.0 generation of that.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of what you focus on, right? Like RJ started a little bit late. I don't know about Bisceglia and those other guys, but like you're in such a hurry to be fast. You start skipping like technique, foot position, this and that. I'm already faster than this guy, and he looks beautiful on a motorcycle. Like, so it's like you get in such a hurry to get there that you end up missing some steps, or you only focus on the things that the most important to you, or you think are the biggest deal, which is obviously commitment and fitness and you know, just that grit like RJ has. You know, that was great for him to focus on that because that's his strong point. But he probably missed a little bit of the technique, even though I can tell him one time and he could correct something.
He could go and do it, I'm sure,
Easy, like easily. But when the brain is off and it's just processing, you go back to what you've done.
The default.
Yeah, it's default. Yeah, perfect way to say it. And that's what typically happens. So when we're trying to implement something new, you have to over-exaggerate it and do it so much to where when it comes to a race situation, you're going to land in the middle of the way you used to do it and the new way, right? You're not just going to be that perfect thing. And if you do, you're going to be going slow because all you're thinking about is, you know, elbows up, knees in, toes up, you know, like you can't do that. It has to be ingrained in you enough to where you find a sweet spot that works for you.
So can you work with him on riding, or are you purely there to just like big picture, mind on the job, championship points, and like leave most of that to him?
I definitely work with all the guys in ways on their riding. I think that's part of the value that I can bring to the table. So I try my best not to push it on them or cram it down their throats, because I think typically I give as much as they're willing to take, you know? And for sure, I mean, there's a lot of things that they would probably tell you, like I can hear you in the back of my mind when I do this, and I realize I didn't do it the way you've suggested or what we all think is the best way, you know? And so there's certain little core principles and, you know, things that you can't let go of. And you know, I'm constantly reminding them of that. You know, I'm not at the baker's factory. Obviously, they got good people there working that facility and working on, you know, everything from fitness to technique. But I also am at the races, so I need to be able to, you know, have some input. Same way when they're out testing and stuff like that. And the funny thing to me is RJ's always open and listens, and sometimes he'll give me reasons why maybe that won't work, but I'm just like, hey, you know how I am. I'm like, just try it, but try it more than once. You can't just try it once and it doesn't work, because it's probably not going to work the first time. So let's give it, you know, try it for this whole moto, or give me 3 repeats here and 3 over there and 3 over here, and we'll come back to it and we'll do it, and then you can go back to your way, whatever. So I'm pretty open instead of forcing it on guys. So that's just not really the way I do it. Besides some core things that you just can't get away from, So, but most of the time, core things they've already developed and they're there anyway. So I'm just working with the details of it. And I'm a firm believer in the details, from details of technique and execution of the track and race day, and everything is where it's at.
Yeah.
The details are what get you standing where you want to stand in the end.
As one lesson I feel like I learned quickly at JDR that I've taken in just through every race I've ever been at, every race I've ever watched, is how important everything is.
Yeah.
From day one. Like, I remember you telling us before we'd go outdoors, all right, guys, are you drinking enough water? You can't get hydrated in one day. You need to be drinking water for the whole 4 days. And like, all right, let's make sure you're eating the right food. Like, there's this big play, like, it's just this one big, like, train that just keeps on rolling. You're kind of never off the train.
No.
Like, you're always having to do something that's like best practice, right? And then you'd get to the race, and I would never think, oh, first practice is super important. And then second practice is super important. And then qualifying is super important because then that's your gate for the heat. And then your heat race is obviously very important because it is your pick for the match. Like, there's such a big picture play.
Every piece.
Every single week. And I did not and before JDR, I was purely just a fan. You know, like, I was around the races filming, but with JDR, I really got to like see the team. Like, I got to watch you sign the checks that everybody got on payday, and walk around and hand like, there's a huge scope, but I just remember learning that so quickly that you cannot win if you don't do everything right.
Yeah. I mean, the pieces have to line up. Everything has to come together. If you consciously skip a step, I mean, it's the percentage of it coming together for you goes way down. I don't know what that percentage is, but I mean, you have to hit every piece, every mark. Now, the guys who can miss some things, like say first practice or something doesn't go good, they're not comfortable. The guys who can figure that out, and then the next step that's important, they're better.
Nail it. Yeah.
And then as they go throughout the day, finally to the main event or whatever, where ultimately it all comes together, then those are the real guys, and those are the guys that are stable in the sport. And then you got guys who maybe start out the day really, really great, and then something slips a little bit the next practice, and then the next, and then by the heat race they're confused and lost. In the main event, they're just like, oh, I just need to get this over with. I don't know, there's no momentum going into there. So everything you mentioned is very important from the first time you roll your bike onto the track. It sets the tone, right? It could still go sideways, but you have to hit that mark. You come in from that practice, review the tape, talk to your people who you trust and the people who you want to learn from, or try and get better for the next. You got to keep going because everyone else is. If you just go, all right, I was fastest in free practice, I'm good. I'll save it for tonight, or it just throws your whole day off. So you not only do you got to have the pieces fall in place, but you have to stay on top of it. As soon as you ease up, multiple people pass you.
So how rewarding was that process with RJ last year to get to the point of winning a title? Because at the start of the year, he was just in like a massive hole points-wise. Obviously had some luck with Cameron and Levi coming together, but got him in, winners take all situation. Like, that had to be a pretty crazy process to go through.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Obviously, you can look back at the moments, San Diego when RJ was, leading, dropped back to third, but was still on the two guys and, like, went for a move in a muddy situation that was just, like, not ideal. And he was already gaining the points that he needed to gain, even if he finished third. So those are moments you look back and go, man, but that luckiness that those guys got to gain points on him, call it luck or decision or whatever, it's the same compared to, what happened later in the season to allow him to close that points gap. But man, when you talk about coming down to the final race and RJ's like has to beat Levi, right? No one else really had a chance to surpass them. So it was just those two, right? But then you got Deegan out front, RJ's in second, and then I think it was it Joe and then Levi? Something like that.
I think so,
But either way, he couldn't speed up and go race with Deegan because that could have went bad. So I'm on the radio going, tell him he's good. Just maintain. Keep an eye on the people back. So if those guys would have been pressuring up on him, he would have had to go up there and get in the mix with Deegan. And who knows? Well, I mean, so everything that comes down to that moment, where it's just RJ against Levi basically, and then all these other elements that had to play into it just to work that night out. And, oh, man, it's crazy. And ultimately for me and the crew and the whole program, like when I was a racer and things would come together as a race win or a championship, obviously it felt good, and I was very appreciative to everybody around me, but I didn't realize, again, what it took from everyone.
And the investment that other people have, like, personally.
Yeah, I mean, from, the sponsors to just the emotions, the lifelong drive and passion for someone to get there and be a champion or be a part of a crew that's a championship effort is like, it all came together. And for me, it was way better than winning a championship for myself. It
really?
Just like you just felt everybody in the sense of, accomplishment that we've all got together. It was just you can't explain it. And it's just, and then honestly, I had that same feeling when Malcom won at Tampa this year. Like, I mean, it's been such a long road to get there, and everybody along the way knew he was capable of it from time to time. Or for me, I believe that he could do it at any moment. Man, that one felt really, really special too. It didn't feel like just a race win. Now, don't get me wrong; those are big enough, but it was bigger than that night for him.
Dude, I was on the couch at home and like we were just screaming. We were so. I mean, that was the craziest night.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was so shit and so good.
Yeah.
All of this, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But seeing James in the booth and then the way that went down, I thought Ricky was awesome. Like, he was just like telling James, like, go get down there, bro.
Well, he knows
like, it was such
them,
like a real moment.
Yeah.
That wasn't produced at all.
Right.
And then seeing Malcolm's, like, his reaction with the crowd and the podium speech that he gave, like, just so genuinely happy. And it was so cool. There was like a moment where you guys got, when you first saw each other, and I was like, man, that's like 15 years in the making between you two guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just all came together, aligned, and it just felt unbelievable for him to put that together. And the family's such a winning family, and Malcolm's obviously done his share winning on the 250 championship wise and race wise, but there's just something about that, and for it to come together with all his friends and family there, I mean, it just you couldn't have written it up any better than that.
And he won that race.
Yeah, it wasn't a accidental give it to me. He won.
Even if Chase stayed up, I think he passes him.
Yeah,
like,
I had those thoughts myself, just because he just had that part of the track so dialed, and that was where everyone was the most vulnerable. That was his specialty, so it was such a difference, and he was executing the rest of the track good, really good, but there he was like head and shoulders above everyone. So, yeah, it felt like it was going to happen. Like, I wasn't very nervous. I mean, when I think he got kind of a 2-for-1 when he went into second, I believe. And then he was kind of like, I'm going, okay, he closed 3/10 on that lap. This is on the radio. He closed, okay, he lost 5/10. Oh, he's got 7. Oh, Chase got caught up with some lappers and he gained a second, So we're calling it back and forth, and then all of a sudden he got pretty close, and then unfortunately Chase, fell. But I wasn't even nervous. Malcom got in the lead. I'm like, this is just his night. This is it. Like, I got nothing to be worried about. You know, it was cool. It was cool. Really, really happy for him.
I know.
And
Yeah.
the family.
And
it was a great night.
People obviously know he's a good person. Like, but he is a good person, you know?
He's
like,
so happy.
You could put on, like, in theory, you could put on the front that he does for the cameras and stuff like that.
Right.
And be different.
Yeah.
Like, you could be a shade off that. And
Yeah.
then but that's him.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally one-to-one who he is every day. And he's been like that since he was a kid.
He is just a great person, happy, positive. He doesn't like to focus on the negative. Like, exactly what you see that's him. I mean, like you said, some people can dress it up even if it's a little bit.
Which is fine.
For the cameras, yeah, which is
fine.
Which is normal. But, I mean, Malcom getting upset or being down in the dumps, I've only seen it a couple times where he's truly there. And it's usually pretty bad when he is. But obviously we get through it. But he's a hard one to get in there, you know? I mean, he usually can find something positive out of the day or the night or the main event or, you know, like where he can go like, all right, I didn't like that, but I'm letting that go. I'm going to focus on all we're going to do is focus forward. He wants to be in that happy place because that's where he's at his best. He's tried it where he got super serious and took everything to heart, and it's just not him. He can't be who he is if he gets like that. Don't get me wrong. He works hard. He does everything that's asked of him, you know. But at the end of the day, he needs to be happy to be at his best. So we've learned that with each other over the years, especially since I've been here in this role. We've learned each other a lot. Been through a lot with it.
Oh yeah, man. You guys have been. Yeah, it's like 15 years, really. Yeah. Like, obviously, wasn't the whole time that you were working together. But I mean, it must have even felt good when you saw him win that 250 title. Yeah. Because I'm sure there was even a bit of validation from the JDR days, you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, you feel a piece of that, right? With everybody I've worked with, Blake Baggett, for instance, when he won his outdoor championship, I mean, it's like you just feel like you have a little piece of it. You know the guys he's with is the major part, and usually they recognize that, you know, and say that to you later, like, man, you know, you helped me get through some of the toughest parts of my racing career, and look at where I'm at now. So thank you, you know. So though, yeah. All those little pieces, when they come together, you just feel they could be 3 teams away from where they were with you, and you're just like, that's still pretty cool, you know.
So when you have you seen Malcom do? Because I mean, I feel like I've seen Malcom do crazy things on a bike where you're just like, dude, you should be winning way more races, like purely on the level of talent that dude has, eh?
It's so weird to me because I watch him and he's a bigger guy, right? But he rides the motorcycle kind of light, you know? I mean, yeah, if he clips something or whatever, it's a bigger issue. But, like, for the most part, like, I mean, how many big guys like him, you see him jump through whoops so precise and so good. Not alone can he blitz the whoops really good, but he's really, really good at jump. He's one of the best at jumping through the whoops. And him being as big as he is, you'd think that'd be hard. But, yeah, I mean, and I think a testament to Malcom's talent and ability to be great on a motorcycle, he's on, like, in that 8-minute free practice, if you watch him put the track together and how quick he does it, it's amazing. Like, he's one of the first guys that put it together and get in a good really? Couple of laps. So he'll land up there a lot. Sometimes he holds it, sometimes he doesn't. But it's funny.
He is always up the board early,
especially in that 8-minute practice, because he puts it together quick because he's so good.
Yeah.
And then when you got to reach for more, that's when we got to get pretty technical and try and figure it out and just, you know, keep him pushing. But the funny thing is, when we do track walks or even watching videos or whatever, there'll be some jump on the track that, you know, track walk, you're like, because I'm always like, never say never. Like, this looks like you can't do it, but I'll bet you anything this happens tonight. Oh, no, I don't know. I'm just like, never say never. Of course it happens. And Malcolm's always like, I ain't jumping that all night. I don't even see a quad there. I don't see that big jump. I'm not jumping that. There's no way.
Yeah.
And then sometimes he's the first guy. And they come back, and I'm like, what happened? I thought you weren't going to do that. Like, nevertheless, be the first one to do it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. I just hit the thing good, and I just sent it. So he's good at, like, he relies on the feeling. Which is great, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
But, he doesn't think his way through it. Like some people would stress on that jump. And then even when they had it perfect, they wouldn't send it because they're overthinking it, So he's always the guy going like, I'm not jumping that. That's crazy. I don't even think about jumping that. And I'm just like, Malcom, I don't even listen to you when you say that anymore because you're full of it.
Dude, he did that at Dream Ride.
Yeah.
We fly him in. Bro, I was like tripping. Fly in. The boys get there. I take him to see the jumps that we built. And Malcolm's like, I'm not jumping any of these.
That is exactly what I'm talking about.
And he was like dead ass too. And I'm like, oh, no. He's like, maybe that one. There was like the smallest one. Yeah. He's like, I might jump that one, but I'm not jumping any of this, dude. He's like, can we change? And I was like, oh, no. Yeah. Like, because the whole time I'm building it, and it's like, okay, it's got to be good enough to where, like, this looks good, but I also can't kill these people.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I've never done anything like this before. And then, dude, Keisha was there. Keisha hit everything, and Malcom just first lap.
And it's probably
everything.
Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect, dude. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, it was just dead ass. Like, I ain't jumping any of this.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't there, but I can imagine. That's exactly the way he is.
But I remember seeing him, like, when we'd go to the compound, and then any of the times, any track that you'd go to, like, dude, he was just so good. Just so good at riding a motorcycle. And also would have some of the biggest crashes and just be totally fine.
Yeah, he's tough. He's very, very tough. I mean, with JDR, I remember when he started with us, he was like, yeah, when I get in trouble, when I'm about to crash, I give it gas and I just send it. And I was like, okay, yeah, right. Well, he proved that more than once to us. Yeah. And I remember the crash he had, it was, oh man, what stadium was it? It was in a whoop section. New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
And he was doing good in the race. He'd been riding good all day, and he was jumping into these whoops and then kind of landing and skimming, and it grabbed his heels and pulled his feet off, and he had the biggest crash. And I'm like, in the tower, like, all right, he's down. It's bad. It's like I'm ready to get down and go like check on him because I'm like, I not alone. I thought he was done with that race, but probably we're done for the Supercross series, right?
Yeah.
This guy gets back on his bike and he's not even hurt. I mean, yeah, he's bruised up, but he didn't break anything. It's crazy. Like I've seen that guy crash really, really, really hard, and it's amazing to me. He is very, very tough, and his body is strong.
I remember I can't remember like what we were shooting, but we were at the Stewart's place, and James, were you there the day? James had like a massive one. They were riding outdoors, and they had like this big single that jumped into like a sand roller section, and James just went, yeah. Dude, the motorcycle just went basically the whole length down the straight, and he got up the same thing. Yeah. He didn't even pick up his bike. He just got up and walked straight to the shop and then drove off, dude. Like, literally just left. Yeah. But yeah, and there was one at the test track where Malcom went through the whoops, got loose, jumped fully across one rhythm lane, jumped out of. Do you remember that day? And he jumped out and like he saved it. Yeah. But I thought it was going to be the biggest crash of all time, and he jumped literally across 2 lanes into the fence. Yeah. Saved it. Was fine.
Yeah.
I was like, bro.
And that stuff used to throw him off a little bit, but.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, that's it.
Oh. Go back. Dude. Oh.
See it pulled his feet off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's dude.
When he says, "I just gas it
And
and try to," yeah,
it.
there you go.
Look at him
That's
go.
it. Yeah,
Fully. Oh my God, that is
Yeah.
huge.
yeah. So I'm up there going, "All right, our season's done. I'm getting down from this tower," and got back to his bike, finished the race.
Dude, JDR was sick.
It was fun. It was really fun.
For a team to just come out straight out the gate and be that legit.
Yeah,
Like, it was pretty good.
yeah.
Podium in San Diego with Mossy.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that.
Me too.
Still got
Me
the
too.
photo.
Yeah, yeah.
Standing up on
That
the
was
block.
awesome. Yeah. I mean, and obviously we thought Malcom was going to put it together for us, but a little too much of that right there. Crashing and
But, I mean, he really hadn't taken motocross that serious. And
Yeah, it
Supercross.
was-
Up that,
Yeah.
around then, you know?
yeah. No, he'll tell you. I just was like, didn't really care for it. And then all of a sudden he started like, all right, maybe I can do this, you know? And to be honest, if I'm being completely transparent, Malcom is not a student of the sport, right? He doesn't like study it or just racing, period. He's just not that guy, you know, which is fine. He's different. His brother was the opposite. But Malcom, you know, in the moment, he's into it and he studies it for the day because it matters. But you take him away from racing, he won't be thinking about racing. He's easy. It's probably helped him last longer and stay happy in more of a happy place because, you know, when he's fishing, he's not stressing about what he's got to do that week or what's got to happen that weekend. You know, he's good at disconnecting. You know, I think a balance, you know, for him, if he was more of a student, could help him in some ways, but then it could hurt him in other ways of, you know, just being happy-go-lucky like he is. So, yeah, he's different, but it's a good way.
Yeah, and he's just so good for the sport.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think he's I'm really glad that he got a win this year because that obviously carries a lot of weight in the sport. Like, if you're a guy that has won a Supercross race, like, I mean, you'd know, like, you can carry yourself differently.
Pretty short list.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like he is under-leveraged. He's underutilized. He's not on enough posters. He's not on enough TV appearances. He's not in enough interviews because he's legitimately one of the most cool guys in the sport, one of the most marketable guys in the sport. But maybe it's because he was missing a win next to his name that it didn't get used, or maybe it's not in his personality to like kind of chase.
Yeah,
that sort of
I
stuff.
think it's part of both of those, but I think you nailed it with, he just doesn't like try and set up all that stuff. You know, I mean, he'll do whatever we ask him, but he doesn't care if he's in the limelight or not.
Yeah.
Yes, he enjoys it when things come together. Don't get me wrong, but he's not looking for trying to build up his fame.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's just not that type of guy, which makes you like him even more,
Yeah.
which would make it even easier, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's just Malcom, this happy young man that, you know, is good on a motorcycle.
Still real good at riding a dirt bike.
Yeah.
How much do you think that growing up with James as a big brother, like that has to just play the biggest part in why he is the way he is? Like, he would have seen and been exposed to all of the worst parts of motocross for most of his life.
Well, there's for sure pros and cons, you know. I mean, and then the whole idea of just living in James's shadows, you know. I think the family did a great job of not trying to piggyback anything that Malcom was earning or getting any deals. He didn't piggyback off of his brother at all, and the family chose not to do that, which is
They made a point
very
of that.
respectful.
Yeah.
He became his own person, and you know, I mean, they are so different. Him and James are so different.
Insane, dude.
You know, and Malcom built his own brand, his own. You know, it's like that's pretty gnarly if you think about it. So the pros and cons. I mean, he probably saw a lot, which scared him, but also taught him. You know, and at the same time, he learned because he's watching probably one of the best guys to ever throw his leg over a motorcycle. So that's his example. So that's all good stuff, right? And then, you know, he could also learn from some of the things that didn't go as good as they should have for James, you know? So he was in a good position, but it would have been an easy one to go like, oh, that's my brother's thing. I don't want anything to do with it, you know? But I think once he started riding enough to realize, like, shoot, I'm pretty good too. Like, maybe I can do this, and I want to do it in my own way, which I think was a great decision.
Yeah, because I think there is an element of responsibility that you can feel if you've got an opportunity and if you are like good at something. If you do, because a lot of people don't find a thing that they're good at, or because you enjoy things the better you are at them a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yes,
like that's why
100%.
people just naturally gravitate, like, you know, I'm pretty good at baseball.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's kind of fun because I'm good at it, you know. But I think that you can sort of get to a point where you realize, like, I'm good enough at this to where I probably have somewhat of a responsibility to, like, see where I can take it. And Malcolm's probably in that category, to where he's like, damn, I'm probably too good at this to not do it.
To walk away. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're probably right. I never thought about it like that, but that's a good point. I think you're like, well, shoot, like,
I've been given something.
Yes.
Here, you know?
God gave me these gifts and this opportunity, and I am pretty good, and I do have fun when I'm doing good. So it feels wrong not to go after it, you know? So I think you're right. There's probably something in there for him and some other guys too along the way.
What was the buzz around Husky when that happened?
When he won?
Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome.
That had to be pretty crazy.
I mean, everyone was so happy. I'm getting messages from Austria, and, you know, Pitt actually was at the event, which was super cool to have him there. And then, you know, from Roger to Ian, you know, everybody's congratulating everybody when the other side does good, you know, because it really is one big effort under the roof of the KTM building, you know, the motorsport building over there. We, you know, when one side gets a success, it feels good for everybody. Of course, you want to be the one getting the success, but ultimately, it's good for us all when somebody does well. But everyone was ecstatic with the company across the board, all brands. And then what was cool to me was, yes, Malcom, you know, had his family there and his tons of friends, and that part was really awesome. But I felt like the industry itself was happy for Malcom to get that win. You know, like, I don't even think the riders were mad.
No.
They're just like, dude, that's cool. Malcom finally got his win. That's awesome. Like, everyone was happy. I didn't see anybody that was salty about it at all. I mean, it's crazy to me. So I think that tells you who he is, you know, and how likable he is for everybody to go, okay, you know, Malcolm's always a good, solid, clean racer and rides hard, does what he does. So he's got a lot of respect from everybody. And
I think the year that he broke his femur as well, I think everybody was kind of getting ready for Malcom to win a race that year.
Yep.
And I think that when he broke his femur, that was like, you could feel everyone just let out, like,
Yeah.
Because they kind of knew that it was coming. And then you're like, damn, is that the last? Was that as close as he's ever going to get to winning? And to go through a couple of seasons to build up to that point. Like, he could win another race this year.
Every race we go to, I'm convinced he's capable of winning. It's just whether he puts it together at the right time. You know, the main event's what counts. So you have to put it together in the main event. You have to hit the details of everything, from good start, good first couple laps, putting the track together, making the good choices of when you got to change your lines if necessary, which pretty much always is. You know, he's very capable. I mean, any moment. I mean, the guys that have won since him, he's beat them at some point, straight up.
Yeah.
This season, you know? So it can happen again. And if you ask me, I plan on it happening at least another time this year, hopefully more than that. But, I mean, it's not easy because there are, you know, even with a few guys missing, the guys that are there are still really, really good. So,
you talked about Mitch being like one of the guys, and then we long tangent off of it. So what was it about Mitch? Like, and how did you even get to that point where you got that ride with Mitch?
Well, I think I got the ride because I led the Seattle Supercross. I was I kind of stumbled into a factory Suzuki ride in '97. Basically because I was living with Red Dog. He was their East Coast 125 guy, and they needed a West Coast last minute, and I just happened to be right place, right time. I'll do it. I wasn't ready for a factory ride, or did I deserve it? No, but I wasn't going to say no. So I got that, and then I led the Seattle Supercross for, I think, maybe 11, 12 laps, and I think that's what caught Mitch's attention and then ultimately got me the ride. So I started with him. You know, I was still kind of in that zone of like working hard, almost trying too hard, wanting it too much, and crashing a lot because I was just willing to risk it all in every moment. You know, I didn't pick and choose my moments. I was just going. But what got me with Mitch, because it didn't start off good. It wasn't good at first because basically he was so hard on me, on everyone. I never been treated that way. You know, my parents raised me as like, you give 100% all the time. What more can you do? You know, like all you can do is try your hardest, like, and not cut corners, and even with your training or whatever. As long as you're doing that, we'll never be mad at you. Well, Mitch, that didn't fly with him. 100% wasn't good enough. It needed to be 100%, and you needed to get the results that we were all hoping for. So we went round and round, and I mean, there was one point where I can't remember how it went down, but I told him, I was like, I can't stand you. I'm like, if I win, I don't want you to get credit. Like you're the worst person I've ever dealt with. I can't believe you speak to me the way you speak. I just, like, I don't know who you think you are. And like, soon as I stood up to him, I think that's what he was looking for. Then our relationship got better, right? Because I wasn't disrespectful. I was just like, man, I had enough. Like, nothing's ever good enough. You talk to me like I'm just, you know, I'm not the same. I'm not motivated by this. That's what I think I told him that. So ultimately, once we kind of got past that, I think he realized, like, maybe he can't treat me exactly the same as he's treated everyone else. You know, he kind of had a recipe.
Matt Walker.
Yeah, like he kind of had a recipe where, you know, his brother was in the military, and he kind of worked it that way. Break them down, like break them down and then build them up, you know, which obviously he's had tons of success. So there's definitely works, but I was a little different, and I think we kind of learned each other. And from that point on, man, it was just like all the testing for myself as well as the rest of the team, donations, like I did it all. Like, and I can remember being at the tracks on those long, long days of testing and going, man, this is awesome to be here and be a part of this and this whole process. Cause he was always having fun and joking around, you know. Bundy would be bent over working on the motorcycle, and he'd hit him in the head with the T-handle. I mean, it was just fun stuff. I mean, Bundy tackle him out of his chair. Like, we just had a great time, and we were testing and making progress most of the time. Yeah. And I just learned a lot from him about the sport and growing up and learning that, you know, not everybody's always going to go, oh, 100% is good enough, you know, like there's more to it. So I learned a ton from him, and he's always been, anytime I've had, you know, questions or thoughts or things that I just couldn't figure out with the people that were around me at the moment, I could always call him. You know, when I lost my deal at San Manuel and kind of was like, okay, should I retire? Should I not? You know, I would call him, you know, get into a management position. I called him and asked him questions on how he handled certain things. So he's just a stand-up guy with just, you know, just a lot of integrity in our sport. And so I really respected him and learned a lot from him along the way. And then also Jeff Spencer was my trainer, and Jeff taught me a whole lot how to connect life to your sport, you know, and look at the bigger picture. Kind of sometimes you're so close, you can't see everything. You take a step back and everything kind of starts to make sense, you know? So Spencer was huge. And then, like I told you before, I absorbed as much as I could from everyone. I learned a lot from Ezra, his dad, Ronnie, Red Dog, his dad. Like, there's just been so many people. It's hard for me to name them because I think everybody kind of took me under their wing and just helped. You know, It was really awesome.
So, yeah, because you were from Tennessee and you didn't really grow up in the scene. And there's so much, like, weird assumed knowledge that you have when you just, like, did the amateur circuit and your dad drove to every race and then your dad knows the team manager. Like, there's like so much that you get that you sort of almost don't even know that you get. And then someone like you that's coming in fresh.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you were very lost.
Yeah. I mean, you just learn every step of the way, and that's why I wanted to be around good people. Not to mention I liked them and enjoyed being around them. So I wasn't using everyone. It was more of a mutual thing where I just happened to be around really good people that had learned a lot, done a lot, and were capable of a lot. So. But yeah, I mean, my dad didn't even. I mean, he knew how to ride a motorcycle, but he never raced, never even really trail rode. He rode probably more street bikes than anything, and then coming from a small town where there wasn't a lot of competition locally at the tracks. And so it wasn't long before I started riding and started winning locally. And then my eyes were open when I traveled out of town to Muddy Creek for my first travel race. And got whooped up on pretty good there. And
what made you want to do it or think that you could do it pro?
Well, so I have an older brother. He's 3 years older than me, and we always enjoyed riding. And then ultimately racing. And I actually had a friend when we were 12. So I had already raced a couple times. And then one of my, there's like three of us in this we had a bigger group, but we were really tight. He died on a motorcycle.
No way.
And so I had broken my leg, like my fourth race ever, broke my leg. And I was already kind of on the outs with it. And when he passed away, I was like, you know what? I'm over it. Skateboarded competitively for, until I was 15. And then my brother went racing. Again, he kind of dusted off the old motorcycle. And
Once he was like 18, getting a car and doing his own thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's sort of the way it went down. But he went and started racing again, and then just was like, hey, man, you're missing out. You got to try this again. So I dusted off my old bike, the same one that I broke my leg on, and I was hooked. And then, I mean, like I said, it wasn't until I won that Phoenix Supercross that I really thought I could make it in this sport. But there was one time I had a pretty big crash at Muddy Creek, landed on a guy, and then, like, broke my collarbone and kind of had a scab from the tire on my neck where it was spinning on my neck. And I was like, I just don't think I'm going to make it. I was working for Pizza Hut, delivering pizzas, just kind of thinking, okay, I'm going to be normal, go into a normal life. And my brother, again, was like, I think you can make it. So it was really him that kind of pulled me out when I was thinking there's no way. And so I'm like, all right, I'll get going again, and just kind of, again, I sort of through
just didn't quit,
just grit and just determination. But there was plenty of doubts. Even when I was factory rider, I had probably more doubts than I should have, of if I belonged or, it was like I had to prove it to myself almost on a
every time,
daily basis that I was good enough. Because I never thought of myself as being as good as the guys I was racing against. But when I get in a race, then I would go, oh, this is not that hard. I can keep up. Maybe I can beat them. It was just weird. It's just such a weird growth and way to push yourself by just not thinking you're good enough,
Is that what you think it was? Like that was the way, that was like the motivation that you used to get better?
I think so. That and just the idea of like I started later, so I had to make up for lost time. So I had to work out harder. I had to do more. I had to put more laps in. It was always that, right? So that instilled in me was just that hard work and just trying to make up for lost time of not growing up racing. I think is what kind of got me beyond, not having the talent of some other guys, and I've had plenty of guys that I race with on the way up come up to me later and go, I never would have guessed that you would have made it. Like they were better than me, like more talent, more everything. They didn't make it and I did. So it really hurt their feelings usually. And they were saying it in a nice way, but I could feel the dig.
It was like a backhanded compliment. Man, I never thought you were good enough to be pro.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah. I mean, the truth is I didn't either.
Yeah.
But it worked out, and, here I have turned it into a
lifelong career.
Yeah. I mean, this is it. I love racing. I love the sport. There's a lot of things that I wish were different, as far as injuries and things like that, you know, and just that the fact that just comes with the territory, you know. But man, it's fun. And
Are you still riding much anymore?
not much, here and there. You know, my son Tyson, you know, he's working at KTM now. Yeah,
riding a bit more.
He started. He was never that into it, and partly because I would steer him away from it, which is I hate to say now because I should have took a different approach. I could tell that he didn't love racing because he had a motorcycle really young.
Yeah.
And I could tell just by when I'd take him to the track or take him riding. He'd ride for 15, 20 minutes and be like, okay, I'm good. You know, he didn't just love it. So I was okay with steering him a different direction because I knew you had to love it, and then you still had no guarantees of making it or anything like that. So anyway, fast forward, he gets a job at KTM, and then he's like, you know what, I want to get a motorcycle again because I had sold his 125 that I had for him, and he's an employee, so he could buy one through the company and do his own deal. So he did. He got a 250F, and then he's like, hey, come ride with me. So in the last year, I've ridden a couple times with him, and then rode his bike one of the days and felt kind of bad because I ride it so hard, and it will last him forever, you know, because he just cruises around having fun, nice and casual, and then I'm just like wringing its neck. So it's 250, of course. But then ridden a couple times, and it's every time I ride, I'm like, it brings something youthful out in me. And I'm like, I need to do this once a week or every other week. Like, I got to lock it in. And then next thing you know, 2 months have gone by, I haven't done it. And it's just the process, you know, of like, I'm so busy, I don't make the time to make it happen. And then, of course, Tyson, when he got his bike, my first weekend off, he's like, let's go to the track. And I'm just like, did not want to go to the track. But I'm like, I need to go with my son, you know. And so we went and rode, and then I've rode a couple times. So I'd say on a yearly basis, anywhere from 3 to 5 times maybe.
Not enough.
But there was 2 years where I didn't ride at all.
Yeah, well, I remember there was like a big period of you not riding.
Well, then Vince, I started doing some of the testing for JDR, and Vince was taking me out to the track and making me do motos with pit boards, and because I was testing certain parts and different things, and I'm like, I can't go fast enough to do certain tests, but some things, because I always had a great feel for testing. I was pretty good at evaluating the bike and feeling the differences. So that was actually fun. Yeah,
that was probably one of the things that extended your career. Was how good you were at testing motorcycles. Like, especially, I'm sure the Sam Manuel years with Chad, like, I'm sure that there was a big part of you being on that program was, like, how much you had to offer to the motorcycle.
Yeah, I think early on with Mitch, really, I established myself as a guy.
Is that where you learned it?
Who could test? Yeah, because they tested everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. It didn't matter what it did on the dyno. We were still trying it on the track, and sometimes it was good.
Better.
Yeah. So I kind of established that, and you're absolutely right. Like, if you took, you know, me, Nate Ramsey, as a good test rider, finished about the same as Joe Blow over here, I was going to get the deal because I could also test. So it for sure gave me opportunities and extended my career. And yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, when I left Pro Circuit, the reason I left after winning a championship there was because Bob Moore, who was my agent at the time, was telling me the whole sport is going to go 4 strokes. Like, it's headed that direction. You need to get on board with it. You're older, and if you want to get extend your career a little bit, you need to be on the forefront of this. So that was some unbelievably good advice from Bob. And so I took the Yamaha of Troy 4-stroke deal when I had a Pro Circuit deal on the table, all because it was a 4-stroke. And that's what I believe Bobby. And I had to sit with Mitch and Bones and explain to them why I was leaving. And it was tough, but I just told them, look, if this sport's going 4 strokes, I need to be on the front of that wave, and I need to ride it as far as I can. I'm already older, and if it's an advantage, of course I want that. Like, if these first few years before everybody else gets keyed in on it, I have an advantage, I'll take that all day long. And they really couldn't argue any different. They were just like, we just never had anybody choose to leave after they won a championship with us. And so we always had respect for each other. So there was never any bad
Yeah, it
blood.
wasn't like a bad blood thing. I never actually knew that was the reason why you left.
Yeah, exactly why.
That's a very smart call in the long run.
Well, again, I don't claim to be the smartest guy, trust me. And I just like good people. My parents were always very good at breaking things down and making decisions. Bundy, my mechanic, like just people around me. I was just blessed with good people that I could bounce things off of. And that's how I do it still to this day as a manager. I'm constantly like asking. It doesn't matter who you are. I might call you someday and go, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think this is crazy? But I just like to collect the information and then try to make the best decision that I can with what I have.
Yeah, but you're also not giving yourself enough credit in that process too, though, because like you just don't get to be around good people for a long period of time if you're not also a very good person. So like, it's luck, but you've kind of made your own luck in that way too, you know?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, it's definitely you kind of reap what you sow a little bit. You cultivate the culture of what you're looking for. So yeah, I think you do put yourself around that. And if you're kind of someone who's drawn to trouble, you put yourself around people who get you in trouble, and you usually get in trouble. So yeah, there's some truth to that for sure.
So when you went to the 4-stroke, what was that like?
Man, it was weird. It was different. I mean, the one thing I was like right away, I'm like, this thing is so much easier to ride on a technical level. Like you didn't have to be nearly as technical. I mean, I could come out of a corner in first gear, second gear, third gear, and fourth gear and do the same jump rhythm. It didn't matter.
That's so wild.
It's crazy. And of course the torque, and I would always relate it to like, when you drive a car, you never go like, wah, and then, the power is so controlled, and that's the way a 4-stroke felt to me. And there was plenty of hurdles to go through with the new 4-strokes because I was on the forefront of all of that, right? So once I made that decision, I did the Yamaha 250. Then I ended up racing opposite coast on the 450, which was a 426 at first, and then a 450. I mean, there was oil still going through the frame. These things were heavy and weird to ride. But because I did that, I actually got the Honda deal for the brand new 450, right, from Honda, because they knew I had experience on a 4-stroke and had, debuted a couple of them now, and then got the 450 deal. And that went pretty well. And then I ended up breaking my femur in end of 2003 going into 2002 going into 2003. Struggled through the year. It took me forever to come back from that and get back up to kind of where I was. And then because I never pointed out of the little bike class or the lights or 250 class, whatever you want to call it, Honda was coming out with their 250F the next year.
Dude, so you just rode the wave at every step of the way.
It's crazy. It's crazy it worked out with kind of what what you planned, right? So, yeah, they wanted to debut their 250, so they're like, hey, don't take this as an insult. Just it's a side lateral step. We need you right here. And I was like, okay. I was never the chip on my shoulder, like, you guys are demoting me. It was like, hey, if you need me to do it, I'm happy to do it. So I did the 250F for them, and did that in 2004. And then again, like KTM jumped on me pretty quick because they had a 254 stroke coming out, and Honda, at least what they told me was like, hey, we had every intention of keeping you, but the deal came together with KTM and they weren't ready. And now I know how many pieces got to come together before you can get to this certain guy, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot that needs to unfold, and then you're like, okay, then I can make a move on Nathan, So I debuted the KTM 250, and it was a very good bike, And then, I ultimately ended with, I did the San Manuel thing for 2 years, and then I got a fill-in ride because the San Manuel thing kind of got the rug pulled out from under me. I thought I was going to race another year with them and then retire with that team and work with that team, and it didn't work out. And then I got a call from J-Bone, Jeremy Albrecht at JGR, and they needed a fill-in guy, and he talked me into going up there. So I got to do 2009, and I think I did 8 or 9 Supercrosses that year. And it was just nice going to Vegas knowing this is my last professional race, So got a little closure.
Weight off the shoulders.
Yeah,
and then you get to actually put a bookend on the career.
Yeah.
Because it would suck to go out in a weird way.
Well, I I had broken both of my arms. Right? Yeah. I had broken both my arms and thought I was going to have to retire because of that, because I was numb and stuff like that. And then I came back and
Is that why you got the big scars on both of those?
Yes,
Yeah.
sort of. Some of them. There's some other injuries and things in there. But, and then this one scar right here was, I had gotten fourth the weekend before. I think it might have been St. Louis. And then we were in Seattle. And a guy landed on me. I had a bad start, and he landed on me. And it wasn't broken. It just blew a hole in my arm. And I had gotten fourth. So we were moving into the next year where I needed a new contract. And I thought, okay, I missed the last 2 rounds and thought I was secure, and I wasn't. Didn't try for anything else because I was locked in just to be with them. And
which team was that at?
That was the San Manuel
San
team.
Manuel, yeah.
And so when I got that call from Jeremy to go, fill in for JGR, I was just like, man, I was always the guy who said, when I'm done, I'm done. I'm not going to be the guy who comes
Just
back
keeps.
and makes it. And he said to me, I told him this like a couple weeks ago, like, the thing that got me was, he was like, you know what? I don't even know why you're stressing. Just come and ride the bike. And if you don't feel good, don't go race. Like, it's super easy. Come ride. See how you feel. If you feel good, let's go race. We'll have a good time. I just need you to make the main event. And I was like, all right. I'm on a flight. Something crazy about that, too. And I'll try to speed this up. But I get on the flight, and I'm going there to do a fill-in ride for JGR, which is Joe Gibbs Racing. And I sit down, and I'm sitting by this, it was a brother and a sister, and the girl's kind of looking at me, and I'm kind of like noticing, and finally she goes, are you Nathan? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I was on the dance team with your wife, Monica. So she went to high school with my wife, Monica, and they were next door neighbors to Joe Gibbs and his family in California.
What?
And I'm like, I don't know, I can't remember how it all came up, but I'm like, I'm literally going to see him right now. And it was like kind of like a sign in my head, or I was like, I must be supposed to do this. So I got there, I rode 3 days, and I was like, I feel pretty good. I'm having fun. Let's go race. And we did.
That's so wild, dude.
Yeah.
So when did you meet Mon in your career? So you pretty much like met her and moved to California, because I feel like she's probably like a pretty big reason why not reason why, but like I feel like it definitely got you like very rooted in California.
It's a big part of it for sure. The funny thing is she dated another racer, Factory Phil Lawrence, right? So I met her, in the group that we all hung out with, which was, McGrath to Emig to Antonez to Phil and, his brother Randy, and like that whole group. I just somehow I made a trip out to California, and they all just
like
took me in. Like, hey, here's this funny kid, this hillbilly from Tennessee. And everyone was so nice to me and so good to me. It was like just accepted me, So, so Monica was dating Phil, and we were friends. Like, it was like we just had a good time, danced together. And it was not. I never tried to overstep. I never even really thought I had a chance, if I'm being honest. And one of my best friends from Tennessee, Bert, came with me to the river, which is a place where that crew went quite often. And so went to the river, and I was like, we were hanging out, and I was just like, that girl Monica, like, she'd be a good girlfriend. Like, if she wasn't with Phil, I'd probably try to hook it up. Well, fast forward, I don't know how month, 2 months, 6 months, I don't know what it was, but they broke up. Her and Phil broke up, and
big old Nate.
This is a story, but so I lived with a mechanic. His name was Lamont. He worked for Pro Circuit, and my mechanic Bundy, who was also living there. There's 3 of us, and so how did it go down? Lamont was there. So anyway, I found out through Ryan Hughes. He tells me, he's like, hey, what do you think about Monica one day? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, she's hot, but she had broken up. They had been broken up for a little bit, and he was like, she was asking about you, and I was like, set it up, set it up, right? Let's go, because I already had my eye on her, and I go home and I tell Lamont and Bundy, I'm like, hey, guess what I found out today? Who's interested? She's gonna come over later, because I had already talked to her by then, And I'm like, Monica. And Lamont's like, yeah, I know. And he's like, I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, she told me. And he's like, I was thinking I had a chance, so I didn't want to tell you. He was a funny guy, really funny. Anyways, I'm like, that's messed up. Like, she told you she's not interested in you, you know? Yeah. Anyway, so then once Monica and I started talking, dating, Phil was mad at me. Because we were friends. We weren't like best friends, but we were more than just acquaintances. We were friends. And I mean, I didn't know how he felt about her. So he was mad like that I was with her and we were friends. And finally, I mean, it sucks to say, but I just told him, I said, look, we were friends, but we weren't that great of friends. So if you're going to be mad at me for this, you should have treated her better and she'd still be with you. But now you've lost her and who knows what happens, right? And then, I mean, he wanted to fight me. He told me, tomorrow when you see me at the track, we're fighting. I pull right into the Kawasaki test track, and he's over there. No, actually, he pulled in. I was there getting dressed, and I'm sitting in the back of my truck. I look up. He looks at me and just goes and parks somewhere else, and we never even had words like beyond the phone call. And then years later, it was after Monica and I married, and I don't think we had kids yet, but possibly. You know, he called me and was like, hey, dude, I was out of line. It was like, you guys are obviously meant for each other. Yeah. Like, he's just like, man, I didn't like it because you had what at the time, you know, he thought he was still in love with her, you know? Mm. So it's a very interesting story. And now, like, it's funny because Phil's happy. He got a great wife, great marriage, great life. And his wife is also a nurse. Right. So my wife and her talk sometimes. So it's pretty cool.
But that whole thing probably really cemented you in California, and I'm sure like helped through.
For sure. Like, she was, you know, like a lot of people always worry about girls getting involved and being a distraction. And I always had girlfriends, and it was never like, I never was gonna like reroute my career because of some girl, right? But I always believed, and my parents did too, is like the right girl can support you and make you better. Mm-hmm. So that's what it felt like with Monica. I mean, I remember we were going into the Chaparral Invitational race that used to happen on like a Supercross style track at Glen Helen. Actually, it was Paris, then Glen. It bounced around, but she was like, you need, you know, when you race, and she didn't know a ton about racing, but she'd been around it enough. You need to race like there might not be a tomorrow. You may not ever get to race again. What if you raced every race like you may not, this may be your last race. Mm. And that just rang true in my ears for that race. I went out and won that race. And that was the first kind of bigger race I won, you know. And I was like, she knows what's up. So it's just been obviously good ever since then. Huge supporter, her family, huge supporters. And again, fell into good people around me.
Yeah, I mean, I always remember like even how supportive she was of like the JDR thing, mm-hmm. you know, because it's funny, like as I got a bit older, I never really realized I was just around my parents. Mm-hmm. So I only, like, that was really the only like adult relationship that mm-hmm. I ever saw. And it was so like default, you know, like, mm-hmm. so you don't really think about it. You obviously pick up what they do and how they acted, but they were together forever. Never saw them argue. Never, like, mm-hmm. it was just very, very, very normal.
That's what you thought was normal.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But like, so I just never thought too much, or I never even really dug into like other people's relationships mm-hmm. in that sense, you know? But then when I moved here, that was like the first time I'd ever really lived by myself with other adults, you know, like not being a kid. And even at my wedding, actually, because Jay and Patrice and Derek mm-hmm. and Trish were all there. Yeah. And I said in my wedding speech, actually, I was saying, like, I just got these guys to thank, because when I was 20, 21, 20, you know, in like those real young years, that was like a really good example to me at that time of like what marriage was like and what relationships were like that were outside of my scope growing up, you know,
Right,
and you and
right.
Monica was
Yeah.
a part of that as well. Like I kind of got to see marriage from like a friend perspective,
Yeah.
not like a
Different.
parent's perspective, you know,
Yeah.
and that definitely stuck with me. So yeah, like you, Monica, Jay, and Patrice, they were like my age pretty much, but pretty
Still,
much like married.
They were further along in
Yeah.
relationships than
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
And then Trish and Derek and like, so yeah,
Yeah.
really, it did always stick with me.
Great
Like
family,
the
yeah.
type of relationship and marriage that you guys had. And
Yeah.
I always thought it
That's
was
awesome. It's funny you say that about your parents too, because I think for me, I was the same. Great example. Parents, long marriage, never fought, never, everything. And I thought that was normal,
yeah.
right? And then just really good morals, the whole night. Just such a great example. Like, to screw that up coming from them would have been, I'd have had to try really, really hard. But then when I got in the real world, like exactly what you're saying, I don't remember what age, but like when I started realizing like that's not normal.
Yeah.
That's actually more of the unnormal. The
Yeah, it's
normal
an
is the
outlier.
divorce, the fighting, the people bickering, and just like that was what was really more mainstream. So for me, I had that same kind of thought of like, gosh, shoot, I want this, but I thought it was normal and almost everybody had this, but that's not true. It's more rare than I thought. So, fortunately, ended up with Monica. We're the same. We don't fight much at all, and great relationship, and for sure, huge part of me even being here today, like as manager. She's very supportive. She's very ambitious. As soon as I was done racing, she went after her own career. She's a successful nurse, RN who runs her own subsist protocol in a hospital. Like it's just like she's a go-getter. So.
And she went through all of that when the kids were at their busiest, pretty much too, really, because like Tatum with their dancing, then Tyson with his football and baseball.
Yeah.
And then she was going through that whole process.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. Yeah. We were in the middle of all that stuff when it
You
was
were really
getting
going through it.
more serious. And then the house that we live in now, she was starting the nursing school or nursing program. And I was wanting to sell the house we lived in because this house that I had wanted for years came up for sale. And I'm like, let's just do it. Let's just go for it. If it's a wash, if we can sell this and buy this one for the same, it's a wash, we'll get it done. And I feel bad. But yeah, I talked her into it. And so she's doing nursing school with the kids and we're moving. So yeah, she's a trooper.
Did you always know that relationships were like a thing you had to work on? Like, did you have that as like an outside perspective, and then you knew like, okay, no matter what, I need to like work on this, or did it just come natural?
I think to some extent, I mean, my parents told me that, like you got to work on anything that's worth having, So, and I saw them, and I think that, but I think also just being in that environment made it more natural for me not to want to fight, not to want to, some people love that drama and
People do,
they love it and they just keep going back to it. Have a good thing, get rid of the good thing and go for the drama, and I again, it's natural for me and I don't like that. Like, I don't like drama, even in the team. Drama, like I'm very against any drama. So I try to, if something comes up, I try to do my best to handle it, or together we'll handle it and get past it, because it will rip everything apart.
Yeah, because that's another trait I always took away from you, was just like just even keel. Always like steadily work on problems. Problems weren't a big deal. It was just like kind of chip away at it,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I still pick. I just ended up picking a new amateur team manager, and that's kind of I look for some of those traits when I hire somebody, because I've it's not easy to hire somebody and put them in a position and then it be perfect, right? And Darian Sinai is now the amateur racing team manager, and he's very even keel, thinks before he speaks, doesn't react with emotion. Those are the things that I'm like, you need that, because you're gonna have to deal with a lot with these families. And so if I put someone who's volatile in there, it's just gonna go. And racing itself is like this.
Yeah.
So you need to ride it right in the middle, or you go crazy. it can't last.
Yeah, no, it's so true. So I know you're on a time schedule. So Pontiac, 2002.
Yep.
Maybe the best race ever.
Well, I think it was. Yeah.
Tell me about that race.
Oh man, it was interesting race. I felt decent all day on the bike. I actually had to go to the last chance qualifier.
I know.
I didn't make it out of the heat.
That is
I can't remember.
wild.
I think I must have crashed or something. But so kind of fast forward to the main event. I'm on the outside. Terrible gate pick. But
on a 2002 CRF 450 factory Honda.
Factory Honda. Thing was a beast.
Was it good?
It was good in a lot of ways, but there was still a lot of work that needed to be done. It was obviously carbureted, hard to ride. It was, I'd say hard. It was
You had to work
explosive. It was a little too much for a 450. They're so much more mellow nowadays. They're easier to ride. Yeah. Yeah, the power is so much more rideable. So anyways, I got a decent start, and obviously I think it was the second lap when Ricky looped out off the Dragon's back. And I swear at that moment, I don't know what place I was in, 4th, 5th, 6th, something like that, right? It was like all of us riders looked around because he was so dominant, and our eyes were this big, like, we got a chance to win here. Let's get it on, right? And I think that's why the whole race got so crazy, is because everyone finally felt like, hey, this is my shot, right? So I think there was maybe 8 different leaders in that race.
It was crazy, dude.
Crazy.
I watched it last night just to rewatch it.
Oh, I love it, but of course. But the one thing I remember was, I could hear the crowd.
It was gnarly, dude.
It was kind of like Malcom at Tampa, right?
Yep,
they were following him around the track, and I took the white flag because it was so crazy. Because I actually tipped over at one point too.
Yeah, you crashed. McGrath was behind you, right?
I think one of us hit the tough block with our front brake, and it tipped us over. I can't remember if he was in front of me.
I think you were in front of him.
Yeah,
and then
probably.
He hit you.
And he hit me.
Yeah.
So, so many leaders, but I took the white flag, and I'm like, it dawned on me. I'm like, I'm the one leading this here right now for the white flag. I'm like, there ain't no way I'm letting somebody pass me on the final lap of this race. After all that's went down, I'm bringing this home. And the crowd was so intense. I thought Ricky was like
right on you.
Like I'm seeing his wheel in every turn, and he was close, but he wasn't that close. And another thing, like I kind of mentioned with Malcom, is at the end of that race, after the finish line, checker flag, I roll up on the next jump, and Carmichael pulls on one side and McGrath pulls on the other side, and they're both congratulating me. And I felt like they were truly happy for me in that moment. And then, now I have a picture of me standing in between both of those legends. Those are two guys. Like, I got to stand on the top step of the podium and around, and it was pretty amazing. Of course, that's my only win in that class, but
hey, if you're gonna have one,
yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. It was very special, and maybe that's the part of the feeling that comes with Malc's win as well.
Well, I think that's one of the things that makes that win with Malcom probably so special. Is right now you can really relate to him in that way of like what it took to get that, because you think about the guys that you're racing against. This is one of the unfortunate things about motocross. Like, imagine if Ricky Carmichael, Jeremy McGrath, Chad Reed, James Stewart were never born. Kevin Windham probably has 140 Supercross wins.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like you get it's just pot luck as to who the people are that are around you.
Yeah.
And like your win is like standing on a podium with 1 and 2 best of all time.
Jeez,
that they won the lion's share of races for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just so wild, the dominance that can happen in this sport, and you just you just got a moment in between those guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, look at this. So this is now Lusk. No, I think Fonseca's still out front at this point.
No. I think that Ernie is in third right there, right? Or is that because you had Tortelli was in this? That's
Tortelli.
Ernesto in third.
Oh, so this is for the lead right now.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's right.
Ezra-
Ferry goes down in the whoops.
Ezra screws up too. I think right. He crashes, I think, in the whoops or parks on the side, or maybe that was Red Dog.
There goes Ferry.
Okay. But at some point, Ezra goes down.
Yeah.
Something happens with him.
Yeah. Just crazy, dude.
Yeah, I mean, like Ferry. I don't think he ever won one either. 450
Did
race.
he never win one?
I don't think so. Not Supercross, right?
Like
So,
you said, dude, short list.
I mean, everybody that got in the lead here was just like, okay, and then they just something would happen, and then boom, I got in there, and I'm just like, especially when I took the white flag, I was like, I'm not gonna be the guy who lets this go, you know?
And Carmichael, this is like a Sexton Hangtown ride right now.
Yeah,
Just ripping through the pack.
yeah, he was coming. I'm lucky that it wasn't just timed events like it is
20 minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes plus a lap. I would have probably been in trouble with old Ricky and his visor down in his face.
Dude, and like way before the magnetic visors too. So like he's probably like
he couldn't get it off. I think at one point he tried and it wouldn't come off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like actually in the way.
Yeah.
So where is he at? Yeah.
He would have moved into second right here, I think.
This is when he looked over and did the point.
Oh, yeah, this is where, Jeremy always talks about, like, I look over and all I see was,
There's Ferry down in the
Ferry
woods.
went crashed. So that put me in the lead.
17
That
to
was
20.
70. So we'd be coming up on 2 laps right now.
Yeah. 3 laps as of right now.
Yeah.
Ferry's just like, dude.
I'm sure that plays.
How
over.
were those bikes bad in the whoops, or was it better in the whoops because you had a bit more power?
It was good in some ways, but we hadn't learned at that time. Like higher gear was better. Like it just got a little aggressive sometimes. Hard to ride, and that frame at the time on the Honda was a little twitchy and a little like it would build up pressure and then snap and release. So it wasn't bad. Don't get me wrong, but I think it was
Still
there was
raw.
still a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
But go for just a little bit more. Is this the last lap?
Should be. It's got to be pretty close.
It'd have to be close.
Yeah.
Yeah, final lap.
So this is where I'm like here in the crowd and I'm going, oh my gosh, he's gonna get me in any corner. So if you watch at the end of the whoop section, I'm like, there's no way I'm going outside. So I like almost screwed the whoops up trying to slow down to get to the inside.
Well, the lap before was sketchy through the woods.
Yeah.
There was one, I think it was the lap before this. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh no, because that's like where everyone crashed. But yeah, once you got through there, that's it.
Yeah. And I was like, still couldn't believe that I took the win there. Checker flags. Old Bundy, he'd get emotional. He was for sure crying right here.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's the photo right there.
Yeah. See, that's like it was like such a good feeling that they were actually. It felt like they were
were
happy
stoked
for
for
me.
you.
Yeah.
They would have been for sure.
No, I think so. I mean, obviously, I still talk to both of them to this day, and they've always been nice to me, cool to me.
That's super
Yeah.
cool. I mean, it's just that whole race. Like, if you're gonna win one, that's the one.
That was good.
That's the one
Yeah.
you want to win.
Weird thing is, that was Pontiac right before we moved kind of into Detroit, but I always had good races there. My whole life, the first night show I think I made, I could be wrong about that, but the first podium I got was in Michigan or Pontiac, and then I won several. I just always, it's weird. It's a different track every year, but if you're good at a venue, some reason it usually comes back out.
Look at Cooper Arlington.
Yeah,
What?
yeah,
How?
crazy.
How's he won like 7 races?
Yeah,
there?
it's so nuts. Like, but it happens. I mean, it would make sense if it was the same track every year.
Yeah,
but-
yeah. No, I've never got that either. Just mojo feeling.
yeah, dirt. But sometimes they change the dirt, and it still works out. You know.
What's the gym program at the moment, mate? You still on the lift every day?
Ooh, yeah. I try to.
You're looking.
Yeah, I'm a little like
50 this
leaner.
year?
Yeah, 50. I I mean, obviously during the season it's hard. I usually get like 4 days during the week, and if I get to the hotel in time, I might crank out that 5th day. But I'm still on it, just like when you went with me. You know, some new stuff, and it's definitely harder to build muscle now that I'm older, though. Like I'm kind of stuck.
For a bit.
I'm kind of stuck, but I'm working on that. I'm gonna break through somehow.
Are you gonna get enhanced at some point?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Thinking about it. That's probably what it would take, though, for sure.
Finally, I've been going since October.
Yeah?
And we just moved around. We just moved around way too much. And I got, it's crazy though. I wouldn't lift because I'm like, man, I'm so sore from jiu-jitsu. I'm putting my body through it. Mm-hmm. Lifting helps.
Really?
Dude.
So you started to recover a little quicker? Yeah. Yeah,
so we started, as soon as we moved into the house, I was like, first thing we're doing is getting a gym membership because Anna likes to lift as well.
Oh,
and she's actually quite good at it.
Yeah,
she knows the programs and the techniques and so I'd say she knows more than me and she goes every day, whether I do or not.
Yeah.
So it's good. But dude, I'm like 180 now. So I put on a bit of size and I feel like I'm recovering better and I'm probably not getting as sore from training because I'm stronger. So it's it's kind of helping on both things. So.
Yeah, for sure. It makes sense. When I'm super consistent with lifting and I'm pushing myself every time, I get to a point where I can't get sore anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So that's probably where you're dabbling with lifting and rolling around.
Yeah.
So, good for you.
So 4 times.
That's awesome.
But you were the guy that introduced me to it. And how long would we have been consistent for, you reckon? It was a while.
Like when you would go with me?
Yeah.
I mean, probably pretty solid for at least a year, maybe longer.
Yeah. And after that, I just never got to do it again. But I always wanted to. I just kind of I just let it go. But now I'm like, I think I finally, because how old would you? You would have probably been about my age.
Yeah. Like once it
would have been 30.
Once it really hit, like obviously I did a lot of cardio as a racer, but I always wanted to lift weights and get stronger, which you got to minimize that as a racer. So yeah,
as soon as you
yeah. I mean, I was done at 35. Yeah. So
I reckon it was about the same age.
It's pretty close.
And but now I can really see the value in it.
Yeah,
like really, and I can feel it.
And it's fun when you get stronger. It's neat. Just shows you've been working, And I remember seeing you not too long ago. You went from super lean and lanky, and then all of a sudden I was like, "You've been in the gym," and you're like, "Yeah."
It was only just I got bigger doing jiu-jitsu though.
Yeah.
It wasn't until October that I started lifting.
Well, that's like real strength, right? Like lifting weight strength is not quite as fully applicable as like actually real life strength.
Yeah.
Like a farmer or ranch hand, they're strong. It ain't because they're in the weight room.
Yeah.
But
yeah, definitely I'm now like I definitely knew it then, but I let it go. I wish I didn't, obviously, but I feel like I've just got to that age now where I'm like, just that's got to be a thing. You've always been another example that you've always had for me was always being the dude in the gym. Got Griff in the gym. He's 20. He's first time.
Oh, it's perfect.
So I said to him, I'm like, dude, just don't stop. Just get in, stay in. But he's been like 3 months since he's been here, consistent. About to go back to Australia, but he's going to stay on the program.
Good. Try to get my son to go, but he won't go with me in the morning because I go too early.
What time are you going now still? 5:30?
Yeah, 5:30, 6:30.
Same gym? Different one?
No, you know what's funny is it's Powerhouse, but when we went to it, it was 24-hour fitness. It's the same spot.
So it's the same building.
It's the same building, but it's new owner.
Dude, I mean, next time I stay there, I should try and
come on, let's do it.
Dude, thanks for doing this.
You're welcome.
I wish we spoke more than we do, but I'm glad we got to.
It always feels right when we get to speak, so it's good. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me, and
this was awesome, man.
See you around.
I'll see you at New York.
All right.
I'll come say hi.
Sounds good. I'll be there. We're actually staying that week with my daughter in the city.
Oh, awesome, dude.
Yeah.
So you'll be there the week before?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go a little bit early, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
Let me know if you come to the city.
Awesome.
She's
the city.
got it
Look
dialed.
at you. You're local, bro. Saying the city.
No, I don't belong there.
That's awesome.
She loves it, but nah.
Nate Ramsey, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.